Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where humanity clings to survival across a million worlds and the galaxy burns with endless war, there exists a space marine chapter whose very name strikes terror into the hearts of heretics, Xenos, and traitors alike. They are the Black Templars, the Eternal Crusaders, the Emperor's most zealous sons. For over 10,000 years, they have waged an unending war across the stars, their black and white heraldry appearing on battlefields from the eastern fringe to the Segmentum Pacificus, from the Eye of Terror to the darkest reaches of the galaxy. They are warriors who know no retreat, who embrace death in close combat, and who worship the Emperor not merely as a great leader, but as a living god deserving of absolute devotion. But to truly understand just how strong the Black Templars are, we must go beyond simple numbers and fleet manifests. We must delve into their history, examine their philosophy, understand their organization, and witness the deeds that have made them legendary. We must stand upon the walls of Hell's Reach as the green-skin tide crashes against blessed stone. We must walk the corridors of the Eternal Crusader, that ancient vessel that has known no home port for millennia. We must understand what it means when a Black Templar chains his weapon to his wrist and swears an oath that will only be fulfilled in victory or death. The strength of the Black Templars cannot be measured by battlefield statistics alone, though their martial prowess is undeniable. It exists in the unshakable faith that drives them forward when others would falter. It lives in the tradition passed down from Sigismund himself, the first High Marshal, whose legacy burns as brightly today as it did in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy. It manifests in the Emperor's champion, that blessed warrior chosen by visions to bear the black sword into battle. It resonates in every litany chanted by their chaplains, in every vow sworn before combat, in every charge that sees ceramite-clad warriors hurl themselves at the enemy with holy fury. Where other Space Marine chapters maintain fortress monasteries and carefully recruit from specific worlds, the Black Templars are forever in motion, their crusade fleets ranging across the galaxy like the vengeful hands of the Emperor himself. Where other chapters number exactly 1,000 battle brothers in accordance with the Codex Astartes, the Black Templars have grown far beyond such limitations, though none save the High Marshal himself knows their true strength. Some whisper of several thousand warriors spread across dozens of crusades. Others speak of numbers that would rival the Space Marine legions of old. The truth remains shrouded in mystery, protected by the very nature of their endless war. This is a chapter that has stood at the forefront of humanity's greatest conflicts. They defended Terra during the siege of the Imperial Palace. They faced Abaddon, the despoiler, during the First Black Crusade, where their founder met his end, but proved that chaos could be defied. They have purged countless worlds of Xeno's corruption, driven back the forces of the Dark Gods, and brought the light of the Emperor to systems that had languished in darkness for millennia. They fought in the Third War for Armageddon, and where High Marshal Helbrecht commanded the Void War, and Reclusiarch Grimaldus became the hero of Hell's Reach through deeds that would be remembered for generations. Tonight, we embark on a journey through the history and might of these legendary warriors. We will explore how a chapter born in the fires of the Second Founding became one of the most powerful forces in the Imperium. We will examine the unique doctrines that set them apart from their brothers, the heroes who have led them through the ages, and the battles that have tested them beyond measure. We will seek to answer that fundamental question: just how strong are the Black Templars? So settle in, let the lights dim, and prepare yourself for a tale of faith and fury, of honor and hatred, of warriors who have waged the longest crusade in Imperial history. Whilst this is the story of the Black Templars, and it is a story written in the blood of their enemies across 10,000 years of unending war. The Genesis, Sigismund, and the Second Founding. To understand the strength of the Black Templars, we must first journey back to their beginning, to a time when the Imperium still reeled from the greatest betrayal it had ever known. The Horus heresy had ended, but its scars ran deep. The Emperor sat entombed upon the golden throne, neither living nor dead, sustained only by the daily sacrifice of thousands of psykers. Primarch Rogel Dawn, Lord of the Imperial Fists Legion, mourned not only the loss of his father, but the terrible price paid to defend Terra from the traitor legions. And among the Imperial Fists, one warrior stood above all others in skill, dedication, and righteous fury. But his name was Sigismund, and he was the first captain of the Imperial Fists Legion, Marshal of the Templars, and the Emperor's own champion. Born in the ash wastes of Terra during the Unification Wars, Sigismund had been found as an orphan in the refugee camps of the Ionis Plateau. He remembered those days with perfect clarity, remembered the young girl named Thera who had protected him and other orphans from the gangs that preyed upon the weak. That memory never left him, that understanding of what it meant to defend those who could not defend themselves. It became the core of his being, the reason he fought, the purpose that drove him forward through countless battles. During the Great Crusade, Sigismund had earned a reputation as perhaps the finest swordsman in the Imperium. Again, his skill was such that even Primarch Sanguinius of the Blood Angels remarked that he was less Dawn's champion and more Death's own representative. He formed a bond of brotherhood with Khan of the World Eaters during campaigns where their legions fought together, and it was from Khan that Sigismund adopted the practice of chaining his weapons to his wrists, ensuring he would fight to the very end. This custom would later become a hallmark of the Black Templars themselves. When word of Horus's betrayal reached the Imperial Fists, Sigismund was given command of the Retribution fleet meant to punish the traitors. But he refused this honor, choosing instead to return to Terra. His decision was influenced by a conversation with a psyker who spoke of visions, of dark times ahead when Terra itself would face destruction. Rogel Dawn was furious at this apparent desertion of duty, believing his first captain had been swayed by mysticism over loyalty. Though Sigismund offered his life in penance, Dawn refused to kill him, but denounced him as no true son of the Imperial Fists. This secret shame would haunt Sigismund, a wound that even time could not heal. Yet when the siege of Terra came, it was Sigismund who would redeem himself in ways beyond measure. As the traitor legions descended upon humanity's throne world, as the walls of the Imperial Palace came under assault by forces twisted by chaos, Rogel Dawn made a decision that would echo through the ages. He named Sigismund, the first Emperor's champion, bestowing upon him the finest armor and weapons the Legion possessed. In this role, as Sigismund swore a holy oath to seek out and destroy the champions of chaos, to challenge them to single combat and prove that the Emperor's warriors could not be broken by the dark gods. And Sigismund fulfilled that oath with terrible efficiency. He fought through the siege like an avatar of death itself, seeking out traitor champions and slaying them one by one. Over 24 of the enemy's finest warriors fell to his blade. Their dark ambitions ended by his unflinching resolve. He proved that faith and skill could triumph over corruption, that loyalty was stronger than any power the warp could offer. By the time the siege ended with the Emperor's fall and Horus's defeat, Sigismund had established a legend that would inspire generations of warriors to come. But the heresy's end brought new conflicts. Robert Guilliman, our Primarch of the Ultramarines and one of the few Primarchs to survive the war, had spent his time crafting the Codex Astartes, a comprehensive doctrine for how the Imperium's military forces should be organized. Central to this doctrine was the breaking of the Space Marine legions into smaller chapters of approximately 1,000 warriors each. Never again, Guilliman decreed, should one man command the loyalty of tens of thousands of enhanced super soldiers. Never again should such power be concentrated in a way that could threaten the Imperium itself. Rogel Dawn violently opposed this edict. He saw it as an insult to the loyalty his legion had proven, a suggestion that the Imperial Fists could not be trusted. Guilliman saw Dawn's refusal as rebellion, as a dangerous defiance of the new order that threatened to tear the Imperium apart even as it struggled to rebuild. Other Primarchs took sides. Leman Russ of the Space Wolves and Vulcan of the Salamanders supported Dawn, unwilling to see their legions divided. Korax of the Raven Guard and Jagatai Khan of the White Scars sided with Guilliman, understanding the political necessity of the Codex. The situation grew so tense that the Imperial Fists found themselves fired upon by the Imperial Navy. Civil war loomed once more, threatening to plunge the Imperium into another catastrophic conflict when it could least afford it. Finally, understanding that stubbornness would only lead to more death and destruction, Rogel Dawn relented. The Imperial Fists would be divided, but the manner of that division would prove significant. Among the first successor chapters created from the Imperial Fists were the Crimson Fists and the Black Templars. For the Black Templars, Dawn chose Sigismund as their first High Marshal and Chapter Master. With him went the most zealous of the Imperial Fists, those warriors who burned with the hottest fires of faith and fury. They adopted Sigismund's personal heraldry of black and white as their chapter colors, a stark contrast that spoke to the clarity of their purpose. They would know no shades of grey, no compromise with the Emperor's enemies, and Sigismund made a vow that would define his chapter for all time. He swore that the Black Templars would prove their loyalty through deeds rather than words, that they would never rest in their prosecution of the Emperor's enemies, that they would wage an eternal crusade across the stars. Yet it was an oath born of wounded pride and burning faith, a promise to demonstrate beyond doubt that the Sons of Dawn could be trusted. Every High Marshal who has followed Sigismund has renewed this vow, making it not just a promise, but a sacred tradition that has endured for 10 millennia. The Black Templars eschewed the establishment of a homeworld, seeing such stability as contrary to their mission. Instead, they took to the stars in a mighty war fleet, establishing chapter keeps on worlds they conquered or liberated to serve as recruitment centers and staging grounds for future crusades. They rejected the Codex Astartes almost entirely, viewing it as an insult to the teachings of their Primarch and the traditions established by Sigismund. Where Guilliman called for measured tactics and careful organization, the Black Templars embraced aggression and zealous faith. For years after the Second Founding, Sigismund maintained vigilance over the Cadian Gate, the stable route to and from the Eye of Terror, where Chaos forces had retreated after their defeat. Many dismissed his warnings that the traitors would return, but Sigismund's instincts proved correct. In 781, in the 31st millennium, 5 centuries after the heresy's end, Abaddon the Despoiler launched the First Black Crusade. A massive Black Templars fleet was waiting, led by Sigismund himself. The battle was tremendous, fleets clashing in the void while boarding actions raged through the corridors of warships. And there, in the chaos of combat, Sigismund finally met the son of Horus face to face. Though he was by then over 1,000 years old, while his body ravaged by centuries of war, Sigismund fought with all the skill and fury that had made him legend. He told Abaddon that he had hunted for him throughout the Siege of Terror, that he had wanted to end him then as he had ended so many other champions of chaos. But age and the long years had taken their toll. For all his skill, for all his determination, Sigismund fell in that duel. Abaddon struck him down, claiming victory over one of the Imperium's greatest heroes. Yet even in death, Sigismund proved the strength of his spirit. The First Black Crusade was eventually repelled, driven back despite the War Master's victory, and the Black Templars had proven they could stand against the darkness. Their founder had given his life, maintaining the tradition he had established during the Siege of Terror, facing the enemy's greatest champion in single combat and making them pay dearly for victory. The death of Sigismund could have broken a lesser chapter. Instead, it galvanized the Black Templars, cementing their traditions and strengthening their resolve. Every High Marshal since has carried the sword of the High Marshals, that relic weapon said to contain fragments of the blade Rogel Dorn bore when he accompanied the Emperor onto Horus's flagship. Every High Marshal has renewed the Eternal Crusade, ensuring that Sigismund's vow remains unbroken. The chapter has never wavered from the path their founder set, never compromised on their core beliefs, never accepted anything less than total devotion to the Emperor's will. This is the legacy that shapes the Black Templars, but the foundation upon which 10,000 years of crusading has been built. Born from the ashes of civil war and the pain of the Emperor's fall, forged by a warrior whose loyalty was questioned, but whose faith never wavered, guided by a vow that has endured through the ages, the Black Templars emerged from the second founding as something unique among the Adeptus Astartes. They were not merely another chapter following the Codex Astartes. They were the inheritors of a tradition that stretched back to the darkest days of the Siege of Terror, warriors who would let nothing stand between them and the completion of their eternal mission. Organization and structure, a chapter unlike any other. When Robert Guilliman penned the Codex Astartes in the aftermath of the Horus heresy, he created a comprehensive framework for how Space Marine chapters should be organized. A chapter would consist of 10 companies, each 100 warriors strong, led by a chapter master and his captains. This structure was meant to ensure efficiency, maintain clear chains of command, and prevent any single military leader from wielding the kind of power that had enabled the War Master's betrayal. Nearly every Loyalist chapter created during the Second Founding and in the millennia since has adhered to this organizational doctrine with varying degrees of strictness. The Black Templars have never followed the Codex Astartes. Not truly. Oh, they pay lip service to it when necessary, acknowledging its existence when pressed by suspicious inquisitors or curious officials of the administratum. But in practice, as their organization is something entirely different, shaped by the demands of their eternal crusade and the traditions established by Sigismund himself. Understanding this unique structure is crucial to understanding the true strength of the Black Templars, for it is this organization that allows them to wage war on a scale that far exceeds what a typical Space Marine chapter could achieve. At the apex of the Black Templars hierarchy stands the High Marshal, the equivalent of a chapter master, but bearing a title that speaks to their crusading nature. The High Marshal is the supreme commander of all Black Templars forces, the keeper of the chapter's most sacred traditions, and the only individual who truly knows the exact number of warriors under his command. This last point is particularly significant, and for the strength of the Black Templars has been a subject of speculation and concern for centuries. Various sources have suggested numbers ranging from several thousand to as many as 5,000 or 6,000 battle brothers, potentially making them the largest Loyalist Space Marine chapter in existence. The reason for this uncertainty lies in how the Black Templars prosecute their eternal crusade. Rather than maintaining a cohesive force in one location, the chapter is divided into numerous semi-autonomous crusade fleets, each operating independently across different regions of the galaxy. Under normal circumstances, the chapter operates 3 primary crusade fleets, though in times of particular crisis, this number has risen significantly. Each of these crusade fleets is commanded by a marshal, an officer equivalent to a captain in a codex-compliant chapter, but wielding far greater autonomy and authority. These marshals are chosen from among the Sword Brethren, the veteran elite of the Black Templars, through ritual combat, and confirmed by the High Marshal himself. Only once in recorded history has this approval been withheld, during an incident known as the Gervart Repeal in the 36th Millennium, the details of which remain shrouded in chapter mystery. A marshal's word is law within his crusade, and he answers only to the High Marshal. This decentralized command structure allows the Black Templars to pursue multiple objectives simultaneously across vast reaches of space, responding to threats and opportunities with a speed that a more centrally organized chapter could never match. On each crusade fleet is itself a formidable force, potentially numbering anywhere from a handful of warriors to several thousand, depending on the mission's scope and duration. The size varies dramatically based on need and availability, with some crusades consisting of small strike forces suitable for targeted elimination missions, while others grow to proportions that would dwarf entire conventional chapters. These fleets are divided into fighting companies, tactical units roughly analogous to a standard codex company, but organized on an ad hoc basis, rather than following any rigid structure. Leading these fighting companies are the castellans, officers equivalent to lieutenants in other chapters, but drawn from the sword brethren and serving as the marshal's trusted subordinates. While a castellan might command anywhere from a few dozen to over 100 space marines, along with their vehicles, armor, and support elements. When a crusade is particularly large, it might contain multiple fighting companies, each operating semi-independently while coordinating their efforts toward the crusade's overall objective. When a crusade concludes successfully, these fighting companies might be reassigned to other active crusades, amalgamated into the High Marshal's household forces aboard the Eternal Crusader, or form the core of entirely new crusades as new threats emerge. This fluid, dynamic organization gives the Black Templars a flexibility that rigid codex structure cannot match. They can concentrate overwhelming force when necessary, deploying multiple crusades against a single target to achieve swift victory. They can disperse across entire sectors, maintaining pressure on multiple fronts simultaneously. They can rapidly redeploy assets from completed objectives to emerging threats without the bureaucratic delays that might hamper other chapters. This organizational philosophy allows them to maintain their eternal crusade, constantly moving, constantly fighting, never allowing momentum to fade. At the heart of this sprawling empire of crusades sits the Eternal Crusader, the spiritual home of the entire chapter and the personal flagship of the High Marshal. This vessel is no ordinary battle barge. It is a Gloriana-class battleship, one of the massive flagships that once served the Space Marine legions during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. These ships were works of unmatched craftsmanship, combining the might of battleship-class weapons with the capacity to carry entire armies. That such a vessel remains in service 10,000 years after its construction speaks to both the reverence with which it is maintained and the resources the Black Templars can bring to bear. The Eternal Crusader serves multiple purposes. It is a fortress monastery that happens to be mobile, containing the chapter's most sacred relics, its holiest chapels, and the extensive archives that record 10 millennia of crusading history. It is the High Marshal's throne room, from which he monitors the progress of all active crusades and coordinates the chapter's strategic efforts. It is a training facility where neophytes learn the arts of war from the chapter's most experienced veterans. It is a symbol of the Black Templars' enduring commitment to their founding mission, a ship that has known no home port since the second founding, eternally moving from one battlefield to the next. But the Eternal Crusader is merely the most prominent vessel in a fleet that spans dozens, if not hundreds of warships. Each crusade fleet maintains its own collection of battle barges, strike cruisers, training vessels, forge ships, and support craft. These fleets are essentially mobile fortress monasteries, carrying everything needed to wage sustained campaigns far from any Imperial support. They can manufacture their own ammunition, repair their own equipment, train their own recruits, and sustain operations indefinitely. This self-sufficiency is crucial to maintaining the Eternal Crusade and allowing Black Templars' forces to pursue their enemies to the furthest reaches of the galaxy without worrying about supply lines or reinforcement schedules. The fleet-based nature of the chapter also solves the recruitment challenge inherent in their structure. Where most chapters recruit from a specific homeworld or small number of worlds with which they have established relationships, the Black Templars recruit from any world they conquer or liberate. Each time a crusade brings a world into Imperial compliance or saves it from Xenos invasion, they establish a chapter keep on that world. These keeps serve multiple purposes, acting as fortresses to help defend the world against future threats, staging grounds for future crusades, and most importantly, or recruitment centers where promising candidates can be identified and taken into the chapter. This means the Black Templars potentially recruit from hundreds of worlds scattered across the galaxy, their gene seeds spread among populations that might never even know of each other's existence. A youth from a hive world in Segmentum Solar might train alongside someone from an agri-world in the Eastern Fringe, both brought together by the Black Templars' crusading nature. This diversity of recruitment grounds not only provides a vast pool of potential aspirants, but also ensures genetic diversity that helps maintain the purity and stability of their gene seed. The actual organization within these crusades and fighting companies differs significantly from codex structure. But the Black Templars do not maintain the rigid company structure of 10 squads each. Instead, squads form and disband on an ad hoc basis, with 5 to 10 initiates, fully fledged battle brothers, forming the core and up to an equal number of neophytes, space marines in training, attached to them. This system serves dual purposes. It allows for flexible force composition based on mission requirements, rather than arbitrary organizational limits. More importantly, it creates a mentorship structure where experienced warriors directly train and evaluate newer members. These squads have no sergeants in the traditional sense. The initiates are all considered equals, though experience and deeds earn respect and informal authority. When a warrior distinguishes himself through particularly noteworthy service, he might be elevated to the Sword Brethren, the chapter's elite veteran warriors. The Sword Brethren serve roles comparable to sergeants and officers in other chapters, but they are also the only warriors permitted to don Terminator armor, making them a truly elite force. From the ranks of the Sword Brethren come the Castellans and Marshals, who lead the chapter's crusades, ensuring that leadership is drawn from those who have proven themselves in the crucible of combat. There is no first company, as other chapters would recognize it. No formal organization of veterans set apart from the chapter's main fighting strength. Instead, veterans are distributed throughout the crusades, their presence strengthening every force and ensuring that experience and wisdom are shared rather than concentrated. This means that even relatively small Black Templars forces might include combat veterans with centuries of experience, warriors who have fought in dozens of campaigns and faced every major threat the galaxy can produce. The lack of a central fortress monastery and the distributed nature of the chapter creates certain challenges. Record keeping is notoriously difficult, with each crusade maintaining its own chronicles, but not necessarily sharing detailed reports with other crusades or the High Marshal. This is exacerbated by the Black Templars' rejection of librarians, those Psyker Space Marines, who in other chapters often serve as archivists and historians. Without psychic means of communication and coordination, the Black Templars rely on more conventional methods. Accepting that perfect knowledge of every crusade's activities is neither possible nor necessary, but this organizational chaos is also a strength. It means that no outside force, not even the Inquisition with all its resources, can truly determine the chapter's exact strength. Crusades appear and disappear across the galaxy with regularity. Some might be returning from the far reaches of space, their numbers swollen by decades of successful recruitment and minimal casualties. Others might have been ground down by brutal campaigns, reduced to a fraction of their original strength. The constant state of flux, the sheer geographical dispersal, the lack of centralized record-keeping, all of these factors combine to create a situation where the Black Templars' true strength remains known only to the High Marshal himself. But this has led to considerable scrutiny from the more Puritan elements of the Inquisition. The Black Templars clearly exceed the 1,000-warrior limit established by the Codex Astartes, potentially by a substantial margin. In any other chapter, this would be grounds for censure, investigation, or even forced dissolution. But the Black Templars have several factors working in their favor. Their reputation for zealous loyalty to the Emperor is unquestionable. Their rejection of librarians, while unorthodox, actually makes them less susceptible to certain forms of chaos corruption. Most importantly, no Inquisitor has ever been able to prove definitively that the chapter exceeds Codex limitations, let alone by how much. The Black Templars are always happy to cooperate with investigations, providing tours of their vessels and access to their records. But these investigations invariably prove inconclusive. A crusade might report having suffered heavy casualties in recent campaigns, presenting losses that would bring them well below codex limits. How can an inquisitor prove otherwise when that crusade operates thousands of light years away, when other crusades are even more distant, when the chapter's own records are admittedly incomplete? The very nature of the Eternal Crusade, the distributed organization that makes the Black Templars so effective militarily, also serves as the perfect shield against those who would question their strength. Shunt the warriors. Within combat doctrine and training, to speak of the Black Templars' strength without understanding their approach to warfare would be to miss the essence of what makes them so formidable. Their organizational structure provides the framework, their numbers provide the mass, but it is their combat doctrine and the training that produces their warriors that truly sets them apart from other Space Marine chapters. The Black Templars do not simply fight. They embody a philosophy of war that has been refined over 10 millennia, an approach to combat that blends zealous faith with brutal pragmatism, creating warriors who are as much holy crusaders as they are elite soldiers. The core principle that defines Black Templars' combat doctrine can be summed up in a single concept: aggressive, close combat. Where many Space Marine chapters pride themselves on combined arms warfare, carefully coordinating long-range fire support with armored assaults and close-quarters specialists, the Black Templars have a singular focus. They believe that the Emperor's enemies must be met face-to-face, that true victory comes only when you can see the light die in your opponent's eyes, that the most sacred form of combat is the melee, where faith and skill determine the outcome rather than mere firepower.
You know, what really strikes me about the Black Templars is how their faith becomes their strength in ways that feel almost paradoxical. Most military doctrines emphasize flexibility and adaptation, but the Templars have succeeded for 10,000 years by being absolutely rigid in their beliefs. There's something deeply human about that stubbornness, that refusal to compromise even when logic might suggest otherwise. It reminds me that in 40k, sometimes unreasonable approach works precisely because it's unreasonable. The galaxy doesn't always reward careful planning and measured responses. Sometimes it rewards pure, unshakable conviction, and honestly, that's what makes them so compelling to me. They're not the most tactical chapter, they're not the most sophisticated, but they might be the most authentic to what they believe a Space Marine should be. But anyways, let's continue.
This is not to say that Black Templars eschew ranged weapons entirely. Their battle brothers carry bolters like any other Space Marine, and they utilize the full arsenal of Imperial weaponry from heavy bolters to lascannons. But these weapons are viewed primarily as tools to close the distance, are methods of suppressing enemy fire and eliminating key targets before the charge, rather than the primary means of achieving victory. A Black Templar's training emphasizes that ranged combat is merely a prelude to the true battle, the glorious melee where ceramite meets bone and blade finds flesh. This emphasis on close combat is reflected in everything from squad composition to equipment selection. Black Templars make extensive use of assault-oriented units, fielding large numbers of warriors equipped with chainswords, power weapons, and other melee armaments. They pioneered the Land Raider Crusader variant, that heavily armored transport capable of delivering large assault squads directly into the heart of enemy formations. The Black Templars were the first to develop this pattern, recognizing the need for a vehicle that could carry more assault troops than the standard Land Raider, while still providing the protection and firepower necessary to reach enemy lines intact. Before each major engagement, the Black Templars perform a ritual that speaks to both their faith and their focus on close combat. They renew one of 4 ancient vows, each established during the chapter's founding, and each emphasizing different aspects of their duty. Suffer not the unclean to live commits them to showing no mercy to the alien, the mutant, and the heretic. Uphold the honor of the Emperor reminds them that every action reflects upon the God Emperor's glory. Abhor the witch, destroy the witch, reinforces their hatred of psychers and their determination to eliminate such dangers. Accept any challenge. What, no matter the odds, embodies their willingness to face any enemy, regardless of the tactical situation. These vows are not mere words. They become focus points for the warrior's faith, channeling their zealotry into battlefield effectiveness. A force that has sworn to accept any challenge will hurl itself against seemingly impossible odds with complete confidence in the Emperor's protection. Warriors who have vowed to suffer, not the unclean to live, will pursue Xenos enemies with relentless determination, never allowing them to escape or regroup. The psychological impact of these vows cannot be underestimated. They transform individual Space Marines into components of a holy crusade, creating a collective determination that borders on the supernatural. The training that produces these warriors begins, as with all Space Marine chapters, with the recruitment of suitable candidates. But where many chapters have refined their recruitment to draw from specific populations or cultures, the Black Templars recruit wherever they campaign. A successful crusade might see multiple worlds brought into compliance, each one a potential source of recruits. The chapter establishes its keeps on these worlds, and from these keeps, they draw promising youths who demonstrate the physical prowess, mental fortitude, and spiritual dedication necessary to become Space Marines. Those selected face the same brutal transformation that all aspirants must endure. The implantation of gene seed, that genetic legacy of Primarch Rogol Dawn, triggers changes that remake the human body into something superhuman. New organs grow within them, each granting capabilities beyond mortal limits. Yet the process is agonizing, and not all survive it. But those who do emerge as neophytes, Space Marines in training, who have received most, but not all of their implants, and who have been inducted into the mysteries of the chapter. Here is where Black Templars training diverges significantly from Codex doctrine. Rather than forming scout companies where neophytes train together under veteran leadership, the Black Templars integrate their neophytes directly into active combat squads. A typical squad might contain 5 to 10 fully initiated initiates, accompanied by an equal or lesser number of neophytes. This arrangement serves multiple purposes, all of them rooted in practical battlefield realities rather than abstract training theories. The neophytes learn by doing, in experiencing real combat under the guidance of warriors who have proven themselves in battle. There is no substitute for actual warfare, no training simulation that can truly prepare someone for the chaos and horror of facing orcs screaming across a battlefield, or chaos marines whose very presence assaults the senses. By integrating neophytes into active squads, the Black Templars ensure that their warriors are forged in fire from the beginning, that they understand what combat truly means before they are fully initiated into the chapter's brotherhood. This system also creates intense bonds between initiates and neophytes. An initiate is responsible for his neophyte's training, safety, and spiritual development. He serves as mentor, protector, and judge. This personal relationship ensures that training is tailored to the individual, that weaknesses are identified and addressed, that strengths are cultivated and refined. A neophyte knows that his success or failure reflects directly on his initiate, creating powerful incentives for both parties to ensure the training succeeds. The dangers of this approach are obvious. Neophytes die in combat with unfortunate regularity, their gene seed lost before it can be fully matured and harvested. But the Black Templars view this as acceptable losses in pursuit of a greater goal. Better a warrior who dies in battle after proving his worth than one who survives training only to fail when truly tested. Better to identify weaknesses through real combat than through simulated exercises. The Eternal Crusade demands warriors who can be thrown into any situation with confidence they will perform. And such warriors are not created in training facilities, but on battlefields. The progression from neophyte to initiate is not based on time served or courses completed, but on demonstrated competence and unwavering faith. A neophyte who consistently performs well in combat, who shows tactical acumen and physical prowess, who embodies the zealous devotion expected of a Black Templar, will eventually be deemed ready for full initiation. The ceremony involves the final implantation of the gene seed organs, formal induction into the chapter's mysteries, and the right to paint his armor in the black and white colors that mark him as a true son of dawn. But even this is not the end of progression. Initiates can spend decades or even centuries in that role, constantly fighting, constantly learning, constantly proving themselves. Unlike Codex chapters where progression through company ranks is relatively structured, Black Templars advance based purely on merit and opportunity. An initiate who performs exceptionally in combat might be honored with relics or battle honors. One who demonstrates leadership potential might be given informal authority within his squad. And those who truly excel, who become exemplars of everything a Black Templar should be, might be elevated to the Sword Brethren. The Sword Brethren represent the pinnacle of Black Templars' martial achievement. These are veterans who have proven themselves through years or centuries of combat, warriors whose skill and dedication are beyond question. They serve multiple roles within the chapter. As the only warriors permitted to wear Terminator armor, they form elite assault units capable of taking on the most dangerous enemies. As experienced leaders, they guide and advise less experienced brothers. As potential officers, they represent the pool from which castellans and marshals are drawn when vacancies occur. Elevation to the sword. Brethren is not automatic, nor is it based on time in service. It is a recognition of exceptional capability, an acknowledgement that this warrior embodies the ideals of the chapter and has proven it through deeds rather than words. Some initiates never achieve this rank despite serving honorably for centuries. Others might be elevated relatively early in their service after demonstrating truly exceptional prowess. The selection is made by marshals and castellans, often in consultation with the chapter's chaplains, and ensuring that those chosen represent the best the Black Templars have to offer. Perhaps the most unique aspect of Black Templars' warrior culture is the tradition of the Emperor's Champion. On the eve of major battles, it is said that one warrior among the Black Templars will experience a vision of the Emperor himself, a divine revelation that marks him as chosen to serve as the Emperor's personal representative in the coming conflict. This warrior, who might be any initiate regardless of rank or experience, presents himself to the chapter's chaplains, who scrutinize his claim and, if satisfied, perform the ritual of anointment. The Emperor's Champion is given the finest equipment the crusade possesses. The armor of faith, ancient suits of armor that have been blessed and sanctified through centuries of use. The black sword, their power weapons of exceptional quality that have taken countless enemy lives. These relics vary from crusade to crusade, each maintaining their own sacred armory, but all share the same purpose: to transform the chosen warrior into a living avatar of the Emperor's will. In battle, the Emperor's Champion serves a specific role. He seeks out enemy leaders and champions, challenging them to single combat, just as Sigismund did during the Siege of Terra. This tradition honors the chapter's founder, while also serving a practical military purpose. By eliminating enemy leadership, the Emperor's Champion can shatter enemy morale and coordination, turning what might have been a close battle into a rout. The champion's presence also inspires the Black Templars themselves, proof that the Emperor watches over them and grants his favor to the faithful. The Emperor's Champion tradition embodies much of what makes the Black Templars unique. It demonstrates their absolute faith in the Emperor as a living god, capable of directly intervening in the material world. It shows their commitment to personal combat as the highest form of warfare. It maintains a direct link to their founding, keeping alive the memory and tradition of Sigismund's role during humanity's darkest hour. And it creates a warrior whose skills and equipment are pushed to their absolute limits, a champion capable of facing and defeating threats that would overwhelm ordinary warriors. But faith alone, however fervent, does not win battles without the discipline and skill to employ it effectively. This is where the Black Templars' chaplains play their crucial role. Unlike other chapters where chaplains serve primarily as spiritual advisors and keepers of the chapter's traditions, Black Templars chaplains are also combat leaders and tactical commanders. They lead from the front, their Crozius Arcanum weapons crackling with power fields as they smash through enemy ranks, their voices raised in litanies that drive their brothers to ever greater feats of martial prowess. These litanies, battle prayers and chants that invoke the Emperor's protection and power, are more than mere words. They create a psychological effect that borders on the preternatural, focusing the zealotry and faith of the Black Templars into tangible battlefield advantages. A litany of hate might drive warriors into a battle fury that makes them nearly impervious to pain and fatigue. A prayer of protection might steady nerves against the most horrifying enemies. A chant of righteous fury might coordinate assault timing, ensuring that the entire force strikes as one in perfect synchronization. The chaplains also maintain the chapter's spiritual health, watching for signs of doubt or corruption, ensuring that the traditions established by Sigismund remain pure and unchanged. They lead the renewal of vows before battle. They anoint the Emperor's champion. They deliver sermons that remind the battle brothers why they fight, what they defend, and what they oppose. In a chapter that rejects librarians and psychers, that lacks the psychic bonds some chapters use to coordinate their forces, the chaplains serve as the spiritual glue that holds the crusade together. This brings us to one of the most controversial aspects of Black Templars' doctrine: their absolute rejection of psychers in combat roles. The Black Templars maintain no librarians, those battle psychers that other chapters employ to devastating effect on the battlefield. This absence is rooted in a psychic catastrophe known as the Howling, an event whose details remain sealed in the chapter's archives, but which convinced them that psychers represented too great a risk to be employed as warriors. Yet this rejection is not total. The Black Templars still employ astropaths for communication across the vast distances of space and navigators to guide their ships through the warp. These individuals are treated with reverence, seen as blessed souls capable of communing directly with the Emperor through the medium of the warp. The distinction seems contradictory to outsiders, but makes perfect sense within Black Templars' philosophy. Astropaths and navigators use their gifts in service of the crusade, their powers employed for communication and travel rather than combat. Combat psychers, in contrast, wield the warp as a weapon, and the Black Templars have concluded that such use inevitably leads to corruption. This philosophical stance does create certain tactical limitations. The Black Templars lack the battlefield divination, psychic shields, and warp-based attacks that librarians can provide. They cannot detect ambushes through precognition or shield their forces from enemy psychers with null zones. But they compensate through faith and fury, through aggressive tactics that deny the enemy time to employ psychic powers. Through their chaplains, whose litanies provide many of the benefits that other chapters derive from their librarians. The result of all this, the training methodology, the aggressive doctrine, the zealous faith, the unique traditions, is a warrior culture that produces Space Marines of exceptional capability and unwavering determination. A Black Templar is not merely a superhuman soldier, but a holy warrior on a divine crusade. He does not retreat because retreat dishonors the Emperor. He does not fear death because death in the Emperor's service is the greatest honor. He does not doubt because faith is absolute. He chains his weapons to his wrists before battle, declaring through this ancient tradition that he will fight until victory is achieved or death claims him. This mindset is replicated across thousands of warriors scattered in crusades across the galaxy, creates a military force of staggering effectiveness. When Black Templars commit to an assault, they do so with absolute conviction that they will prevail. This confidence is not arrogance, but the product of 10,000 years of tradition, of training that begins in actual combat, of faith that views every battle as a test of devotion. Enemy forces facing a Black Templar's charge do not merely face superhuman warriors in powered armor. They face zealots who view combat as worship, whose every blow is a prayer, whose every death is a martyrdom that will be remembered and honored. Legendary heroes, Helbrecht and Grimaldus. Throughout their 10 millennia of crusading, the Black Templars have produced countless heroes whose deeds have become the stuff of legend. From Sigismund himself to warriors whose names are remembered only in the chapter's most ancient archives, each generation has seen champions arise who embody the chapter's ideals and demonstrate its strength. But among all these heroes, two names stand out in the current age. Two warriors whose actions have not only shaped the Black Templars, but have become known throughout the Imperium. High Marshal Helbrecht and Reclusiarch Grimaldus. High Marshal Helbrecht was not born to greatness. He began his life in the underhives of a world called piety, one of countless billions who struggled to survive in the lightless depths beneath imperial hive cities. What he could not have known was that his life was being watched from birth. That agents of the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own golden-armored guardians, it had been guided by prophecy to protect him until the Black Templars could find him. This suggests that even as a child, even before his transformation into a space marine, Helbrecht was marked for exceptional service. Recruited into the Black Templars, Helbrecht displayed the qualities that would define his leadership from his earliest days as a neophyte. He was stubborn to a fault, absolutely unwilling to yield regardless of the tactical situation. He possessed a fierce personal honor that would not tolerate compromise or defeat. Most importantly, he demonstrated unswerving loyalty to the Emperor and the ideals of the chapter. These traits saw him rise through the ranks, earning elevation to Sword Brethren after he slew a vampire that had risen to power on Cephian IV, a deed that showcased both his combat prowess and his dedication to purging the unclean. He served under Marshal Didin as part of that marshal's crusade, fighting across multiple sectors and campaigns. The crucible of combat forged him into an exemplary warrior, one whose skill and determination earned him respect from veterans and newer warriors alike. When Marshal Didin fell in battle, the choice of successor was obvious. Helbrecht was elected to lead the crusade, assuming command of forces that had looked to him for leadership even before the formal transfer of authority. But Helbrecht's true test came in 989 M41, when High Marshal Cordhel, the supreme commander of the entire Black Templars chapter, was slain by a frenzied Cornate berserker during a battle whose details remain known only to the chapter's highest echelons. The marshals of the Black Templars gathered to select a new High Marshal, a conclave that brought together the chapter's most experienced and proven leaders. Their choice was unanimous. Helbrecht would lead the Black Templars into a new era. The elevation came with great ceremony and even greater responsibility. Helbrecht was presented with the sword of the High Marshals, that ancient blade containing fragments of the weapon Rogel Dawn had borne during the Siege of Terra. This sword, carried by every High Marshal since Sigismund, serves as a constant reminder of the chapter's duty, of the oath to atone for the Emperor's mortal wounding by bringing death to his enemies. Touching that weapon, our Helbrecht understood that he now bore responsibility not just for his own crusade, but for the entire chapter, for the eternal mission established at the second founding. His first major undertaking as High Marshal demonstrated both his ambition and his willingness to take risks. He launched the Ghoul Stars Crusade, an expedition into one of the most dangerous and mysterious regions of space. The Ghoul Stars had swallowed every previous Imperial expedition that had ventured there, ships and entire armies vanishing without trace. But Helbrecht believed that the Xenos known as the Sithor Fiends dwelt in that region, and he was determined to eliminate them utterly. For 8 years, the Crusade fought through the outlying systems of the Ghoul Stars, exterminating the Sithor Fiends they found there and pushing ever deeper into that haunted region. The campaigns were brutal, the casualties significant, but Helbrecht drove his forces forward with iron determination. Finally, they reached what they believed were the core systems, the homeworlds of the Sithor Fiends. What they found was eerie emptiness. The Xenos were simply gone, their worlds abandoned, no trace remaining of where they had fled or why. This apparent failure, Helbrecht's first major campaign as High Marshal ending in such ambiguous results, could have undermined his authority. But before he could pursue the investigation further, a desperate call for aid arrived from Armageddon. Gazgul Thraka, perhaps the most dangerous orc warlord in the galaxy, had returned to the world he had failed to conquer decades earlier. The third war for Armageddon had begun, and Helbrecht immediately redirected his crusade toward this new and undeniable threat. What followed would become one of the defining moments, not just of Helbrecht's career, but of the entire Black Templars chapter in the modern era. Helbrecht contacted 2 other marshals, ordering them to bring their crusades to Armageddon as well. The concentration of 3 entire Black Templars crusades in one system represented a commitment of forces that few chapters could match. It demonstrated the advantage of the Black Templars structure. Where a Codex chapter might send a company or 2, the Black Templars could deploy thousands of warriors. Upon reaching the Armageddon system, Helbrecht made a decision that showcased his strategic acumen. While other Space Marine chapter masters led their forces planetside to contest the surface battles, Helbrecht recognized that the true key to victory lay in space. The Orc Armada was massive, countless ships and hulks carrying seemingly endless reinforcements to the surface. As long as those reinforcements continued to arrive, the ground war could never be truly won. Helbrecht took command of the space fleet, assuming overall authority over all Space Marine warships in the system. Working closely with Admiral Parrell of the Imperial Navy, Helbrecht directed a void war of unprecedented scale. Black Templars battle barges and strike cruisers coordinated with Navy vessels to systematically destroy the Orc fleet. Boarding actions saw Black Templars teleporting or using boarding torpedoes to bring battle to the enemy, and fighting through the twisted corridors of Orc vessels to disable or destroy them from within. Strike cruisers hunted Orc rocks, those asteroid ships the Greenskins used as assault platforms, eliminating them before they could reach Armageddon's surface. The strategy worked. Slowly but surely, the flow of Orc reinforcements diminished. The ground forces, though still facing horrific battles, found themselves fighting an enemy whose numbers were no longer limitless. Helbrecht's decision to focus on the naval campaign rather than pursuing glory on the surface demonstrated a strategic sophistication that some might not have expected from a leader of such an aggressive chapter. He understood that the most important battle was not necessarily the most visible one. That true victory required cutting off the enemy's ability to sustain their offensive. But Helbrecht's commitment to Armageddon came at a price. Early in the campaign, he made a tactical decision that would haunt him for years. To ensure he had overall command of the Space Marine Void Forces, he exaggerated the size of his contingent at Armageddon, claiming to have deployed 900 Black Templars, when in fact he had brought only 400. This deception secured him the authority he needed to direct the space war effectively, but it also meant he had less strength than others believed. When he later left Armageddon briefly to gather reinforcements, bringing his actual strength up to what he had claimed originally, the absence of his ships during that period created critical vulnerabilities in the defensive fleet. And the Orcs exploited these gaps, launching attacks that might have been repelled had Helbrecht not created the situation through his initial deception. It was a lesson in the dangers of political maneuvering even in pursuit of military objectives, a reminder that truth and honor should not be compromised, even when the cause is righteous. The war on Armageddon also saw Helbrecht make another significant decision that would define his legacy. After the initial crisis passed, after the Orc assault had been blunted, though not yet fully defeated, Helbrecht departed Armageddon in company with Commissar Yarrick. Together they began hunting for the space hulk thought to house Gazkul himself, determined to end the Orc warlord who had caused so much destruction. This personal vendetta, this refusal to let an enemy escape, this became an obsession that would drive Helbrecht for decades to come. That obsession eventually led him into confrontation with one of the galaxy's other great threats, the Necrons. At the Battle of Schrödinger 7, Helbrecht led a Black Templars force against the army of Imhotep the Stormlord, a Necron overlord whose tactical brilliance was legendary even among his own ancient race. The battle was a disaster for the Black Templars. Imhotep outmaneuvered them at every turn, demonstrating that even Space Marines could be outwitted by a sufficiently cunning enemy. Helbrecht himself was captured, humiliated, and only released as a message that the Stormlord could destroy the Black Templars whenever he chose. For many leaders, such a defeat would have been crushing, but Helbrecht's stubborn nature would not accept it. He sought revenge with the same single-minded determination he had shown in pursuing Gazakul. Aboard his battle barge, Sigismund, Helbrecht hunted Imhotep's tomb ship, Inevitable Conqueror, finally locating it en route to Davatas. The Black Templars launched boarding torpedo attacks, overwhelming the vessel's defenses through sheer aggressive fury. Helbrecht and the Stormlord met face-to-face once more, and this time the High Marshal prevailed. Though Imhotep escaped destruction by teleporting to an escort vessel, Helbrecht had proven his point. In rage at the Stormlord's escape, he destroyed the Inevitable Conqueror from the inside, annihilating the ancient tomb ship. These campaigns, these victories and defeats, shaped Helbrecht into the leader he is today. He learned that strategic acumen matters as much as tactical prowess. Again, that understanding the larger picture can be more important than winning individual battles. He learned that deception, even in pursuit of noble goals, creates its own problems. He learned that even the most stubborn determination cannot guarantee victory against every enemy, but that refusing to accept defeat can turn failure into eventual triumph. The creation of the Great Rift and the subsequent Indomitus Crusade presented Helbrecht with new challenges. The Black Templars found themselves scattered, some crusades trapped in the Imperium Nihilus beyond the rift, communication with them lost, their fates unknown. As High Marshal, Helbrecht had to accept that some of his warriors were beyond his ability to aid or even contact. Yet he refused to believe them lost, maintaining faith that they continued their crusades even in isolation, that they upheld the traditions of the chapter even when cut off from its leadership. It was during this time that Rabut Guilliman returned from stasis and, leading the Indomitus Crusade to stabilize the Imperium, sought out Helbrecht personally. The Primarch brought with him an offer that could have torn the Black Templars apart: the Primaris Space Marines, a new generation of enhanced warriors created through technology that even Guilliman acknowledged bordered on heresy. He also brought criticism of Helbrecht's pursuit of Gazkul, arguing that the High Marshal's personal vendetta distracted him from his duty to the Imperium as a whole. The meeting between Primarch and High Marshal could have gone many ways. Guilliman's Codex Astartes was something the Black Templars had rejected since their founding. His attempt to lecture Helbrecht on duty might have been met with the same stubborn resistance that Rogel Dorn once showed. But Helbrecht demonstrated wisdom in that moment. He accepted the Primaris Space Marines, seeing in them a spark of the divine, evidence that the Emperor himself had blessed this new technology. He acknowledged Guilliman's point about responsibility to the larger Imperium, even while maintaining that his pursuit of specific enemies served the Emperor's will. This decision to accept the Primaris Marines was crucial, not just for the Black Templars, but for the wider Imperium. Guilliman knew that if the zealous, traditionalist Black Templars accepted these new warriors, other chapters would follow their example. Helbrecht's approval helped smooth the integration of Primaris Marines across the Adeptus Astartes. And for his own chapter, it meant an influx of new strength at a time when the Imperium faced existential threats on every front. Helbrecht promoted several sword brethren to the rank of Marshal, giving them command of new crusades composed primarily of former Grey Shields, those Primaris Marines who had not yet been assigned to specific chapters. This expansion of the Black Templars' strength, coming at a time when the galaxy was literally split in half by the Great Rift, demonstrated the chapter's ability to adapt and grow even in the face of catastrophe. Where other chapters might have been diminished by the crisis, the Black Templars emerged potentially stronger than ever. Today, High Marshal Helbrecht continues to lead the Black Templars with the same stubborn determination that has defined his career. He still hunts Gazgakul, though he has learned to balance that personal mission against larger responsibilities. He still pushes himself and his warriors to their limits, but with greater wisdom about when to press forward and when to consolidate gains. He embodies the Black Templars' ethos of never accepting defeat, never compromising on core beliefs, never resting while the Emperor's enemies still draw breath. But if Helbrecht represents the strategic and leadership aspects of Black Templars' strength, then Reclusiarch Grimaldus embodies their spiritual heart and tactical ferocity. Grimaldus rose to prominence during the Third War for Armageddon, specifically during the defense of Hive Hell's Reach. He had been noted as the youngest Marine in Black Templars' history to be raised to Sword Brother, suggesting exceptional capability from early in his service. After the Battle of Fire and Blood, he was elevated from the ranks of his marshal's sword brethren and inducted into the mysteries of the Reclusium, beginning his path as a chaplain. His promotion to Reclusiarch, the high chaplain position that makes him keeper of the chapter's relics and spiritual leader second only to the High Marshal himself, came after the death of his mentor Mordred. This promotion was recent enough that Grimaldus was still relatively inexperienced in the role when Helbrecht ordered him to lead the Hell's Reach crusade with 100 Black Templars assigned to defend one of Armageddon's largest industrial centers. The defense of Hell's Reach would become one of the most famous battles in recent Imperial history, and Grimaldus would emerge from it as the hero of Hell's Reach, a title that understates the significance of what he achieved. The battle began poorly for the defenders. The Orcs had launched a surprise attack using massive submersibles, emerging from polluted waters to assault the Hive's dockyards. The surprise was total, and the Hive militia, Imperial Guard units, and even some Space Marines were overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the assault. Grimaldus gathered his 100 Black Templars and led them to the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, a massive basilica that had stood since Armageddon's earliest days of colonization. This temple was not just a spiritual center, but a strategic position, its location and structure making it a natural fortress. Grimaldus decided that if Hell's Reach was to be held, but the temple would be the anchor point around which the defense would be organized. What followed was weeks of the most brutal combat imaginable. Millions of orcs assaulted Hell's Reach, wave after wave of greenskins hurling themselves at the defenders. The Black Templars fought alongside regiments of the Armageddon Steel Legion, titans of the Legio Invigilata, civilian militias, and battle sisters of the Order of the Argent Shroud. But it was Grimaldus who held the defense together, his presence and leadership transforming disparate forces into a coordinated resistance. His famous speech, delivered as the Orc horde gathered outside the Hive's walls, became the stuff of legend. In words that mixed contempt for the enemy with absolute confidence in the rightness of the Imperial cause, Grimaldus transformed frightened defenders into fanatic warriors ready to die for their world. He reminded them of their strength, their weapons, their purity of purpose. He mocked the Orcs who dared attack such a defended position, and he proclaimed that Hell's Reach was their city, their world, a sacred trust that would not be surrendered. The defense of the Temple of the Emperor, Ascendant itself, stands as perhaps the greatest testament to Grimaldus's will and the effectiveness of Black Templars' doctrine. As the battle raged across Hell's Reach, the Orcs eventually concentrated their assault on the temple, recognizing it as the keystone of the defense. The Imperial Guard units and civilian militia fought bravely, but were eventually overwhelmed. They fled, seeking safety elsewhere in the Hive. But the Black Templars refused to yield. So Grimaldus declared that he had dug his grave in that place, that he would either triumph or die there. It was not bravado, but statement of absolute conviction. The battle degenerated into the most desperate close-quarters combat, Ceramite-armored Space Marines clashing with Orcs in the temple's sacred spaces, holy relics shattered by weapons fire, millennia of devotion subjected to the brutal reality of war. And then, finally, inevitably, the temple collapsed. Tons of stone and metal came crashing down, burying friend and foe alike in the rubble. All were thought lost. The collapse of the temple was seen as the fall of the defense's center, a catastrophe from which Hellsreach could not recover. But a day later, Grimaldus crawled out from beneath the ruins, carrying the last surviving relics of the temple with him. Yet he was grievously wounded, his armor cracked and broken, his body crushed in ways that should have killed even a space marine. The apothecaries who treated him declared his survival a miracle, impossible by any rational assessment of his injuries. This incident created something significant, a legend. The people of Hellsreach, who had witnessed the Black Templars' refusal to yield, who had heard Grimaldus's speeches and seen him lead from the front, began to view him not merely as a warrior, but as a manifestation of the Emperor's will. An imperial cult formed around him, seeing in his survival and the defense of Hellsreach evidence of divine favor. The title, Hero of Hellsreach, became permanent, and Grimaldus's name was known not just among the Adeptus Astartes, but throughout Armageddon and beyond. But perhaps most remarkable was what Grimaldus had accomplished strategically. His defense of Hellsreach, his refusal to yield the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, had bought crucial time for the wider defense of Armageddon. The Orc forces concentrated against Hellsreach were not available to assault other positions. The example of the Black Templars' resistance inspired defenders across the hive world, stiffening resistance and preventing the kind of collapse that might have led to planetary defeat. By holding one position with 100 Space Marines and whatever other forces he could rally, Grimaldus had influenced the entire campaign. Following the war, Grimaldus was intended to join High Marshal Helbrecht and Commissar Yarrick in hunting Gazkul. But fate had other plans. He was assigned to defend a world threatened by a massive Tyranid splinter fleet, one of the galaxy's other existential threats. Later, he would provide assistance to the Celestial Lions, another Space Marine chapter that had run afoul of the Inquisition and faced potential extinction. His intervention helped that chapter complete a crucial mission, restoring their honor and securing their future. Like Helbrecht, Grimaldus eventually crossed the Rubicon Primaris, undergoing the dangerous procedure to transform himself into a Primaris Space Marine. This was reportedly easier for Black Templars than other chapters, with speculation that their unwavering faith somehow aided the transformation. Grimaldus survived the procedure, emerging with enhanced capabilities that made him an even more formidable warrior and spiritual leader. Today, Grimaldus continues to serve as the Black Templars' Reclusiarch, a position that makes him responsible for the chapter's spiritual health and the preservation of its traditions. He is accompanied in battle by Cenobite servitors, bearing the relics he saved from the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, constant reminders of what he has endured and what he represents. His presence on a battlefield provides morale benefits that go beyond mere tactical considerations. His legend inspiring not just Black Templars, but any Imperial forces fighting alongside them. Together, Helbrecht and Grimaldus represent different facets of Black Templars' strength. Helbrecht embodies strategic leadership, the ability to coordinate multiple crusades and make decisions that affect the entire chapter. Yet he demonstrates that the Black Templars are not merely zealots charging blindly into battle, but warriors led by commanders who understand the larger picture, who can outthink their enemies as readily as outfight them. Grimaldus represents the spiritual core, the unwavering faith that transforms individual Space Marines into something greater, the refusal to yield that has defined the chapter since Sigismund's founding vow. The Third War for Armageddon, their greatest test. If you want to understand the true strength of the Black Templars, if you want to see their capabilities demonstrated on the grandest stage, then you must turn your attention to the Third War for Armageddon. This conflict, which began in 998 M41, stands as perhaps the greatest test the chapter has faced in recent millennia. It was a war that saw 3 entire Black Templars crusades deployed, that witnessed some of the most heroic moments in the chapter's long history, and that proved beyond doubt that the Black Templars remain one of the Imperium's most formidable military assets. Armageddon itself is a world of tremendous strategic importance, a hive world whose vast manufactories produce weapons and equipment for the Imperial war machine. Its location makes it a critical waypoint for trade and military movements across multiple sectors. More significantly, it had already been the site of two previous major conflicts. The First War for Armageddon saw the demon Primarch Angron manifest on the planet, bringing with him legions of Horn's faithful, and it took the combined might of the Grey Knights and Space Wolves to banish him back into the warp. The Second War for Armageddon saw the Orc warlord Gazkul Thraka assault the world, only to be driven back by the legendary Commissar Yarrick and numerous Space Marine chapters. Now, in the waning years of the 41st Millennium, Gazkul had returned. But this time, he came not with a single war host, but with what might have been the largest Orc migration since the War of the Beast 8 millennia earlier. Hundreds of rocks, those asteroid ships the Orcs used to travel between the stars, smashed into Armageddon's surface. Space hulks vomited forth millions of greenskins. The Orc armada in orbit was so vast that it seemed to blot out the stars themselves. This was not merely another war, but a potential extinction event for one of the Imperium's most vital worlds. The Imperial response was correspondingly massive. The call went out across surrounding sectors and beyond, summoning any forces that could reach Armageddon before it fell. Over 20 Space Marine chapters responded, sending forces ranging from single companies to their entire chapter strength. The Astra Militarum deployed hundreds of regiments. The Collegia Titanica walked god machines onto the battlefield. The Sisters of Battle came in force, and the Black Templars, recognizing the existential threat Gazgukul represented, committed 3 entire crusades to the world's defense. High Marshal Helbrecht personally led the Black Templars' commitment to Armageddon, bringing with him the Eternal Crusader and a substantial portion of the chapter's space fleet. He contacted Marshal Ricard of the Demaris Crusade and Marshal Amalrich of the Tiberior Crusade, ordering them to redirect their forces to Armageddon immediately. The concentration of 3 crusades represented a commitment of thousands of Black Templars warriors, support personnel, vehicles, and ships. It was a demonstration of the chapter's true scale and a level of force projection that few other chapters could match. Upon reaching Armageddon, Helbrecht made his crucial strategic decision to focus on the Void War. While other chapter masters led their forces to the surface to fight in the grinding battles across Armageddon's hive cities and ash wastes, Helbrecht recognized that the key to victory lay in cutting off Orc reinforcements. Admiral Parole of the Imperial Navy was glad to have the Black Templars' expertise and firepower under his command, and together they began the systematic destruction of the Orc fleet. This was no simple void battle, but a grueling campaign that would last for months. The Orc Armada was not a coordinated fleet in any conventional sense, but a chaotic mass of vessels of wildly varying capabilities. Some were proper warships, crude but effective designs bristling with weapons. Others were converted merchant vessels or captured Imperial ships. Still others were space hulks, those nightmarish conglomerations of ships fused together by warp energies, each potentially containing thousands of Orcs in their twisted corridors. The Black Templars excelled in this environment. Their fleet tactics emphasized aggressive boarding actions, using teleportation, boarding torpedoes, and small craft to bring the battle directly to the enemy. Black Templars warriors would materialize in the heart of Orc vessels, fighting through the greenskins in brutal close-quarters combat, while other forces attacked from outside. It was a doctrine perfectly suited to the Black Templars' preference for melee combat, and it proved devastatingly effective. One notable engagement saw Helbrecht's forces attacking the space hulk Malevolent Dread. This massive construction had been bombarded by the Black Templars' battle barge Light of Purity earlier in the campaign, and Black Templars' boarding parties had already planted charges in its depths, but the hulk continued to function, continuing to deliver reinforcements to the surface. Helbrecht decided to end the threat permanently, gathering his Sword Brethren Terminators and launching a massive boarding assault directly into the hulk's heart. The fighting was apocalyptic. Terminator-armored veterans clashed with orc nobs and war bosses in corridors too narrow for vehicles, where the only advantage was superior training and equipment. Rooms that had once been cargo bays or habitation spaces became killing grounds where ceramite met orc hide, where power fists crushed skulls and orc cleavers found gaps in ancient armor. The Black Templars fought their way to critical systems, planting additional charges and sabotaging the Hulk's already damaged systems. When they withdrew, the malevolent dread was left drifting. Its ability to launch more surface assaults permanently ended. But the space war was only one aspect of the Black Templars' contribution to Armageddon's defense. On the surface, the other two crusades fought in the grinding close-quarters battles that defined the campaign. One crusade, the Solemnus Crusade, pursued an orc war boss named Morkrul Grimscar into the equatorial jungle, an area of Armageddon that had been thought uninhabitable, but proved to host both orc forces and something far worse. In the depths of that jungle, the Black Templars discovered a Chaos Warp Gate, a portal that had been opened during the First War for Armageddon by World Eaters, traitor Marines. Time-displaced World Eaters, led by a champion named Hrothgar Furor, were still emerging from the portal, decades out of sync with normal reality, but no less deadly for it. The Solemnus Crusade found themselves fighting both orcs and Chaos Marines simultaneously, a nightmare scenario that would have broken lesser forces. They were aided in this battle by the Relictors, another Space Marine chapter that had its own agenda in the region. Together, as the two chapters managed to defeat the local orc forces and close the warp gate, but the aftermath nearly led to bloodshed between the ostensible allies. When a Relictors officer claimed a Chaos relic from the battlefield, intending to study and potentially weaponize it, the Black Templars were horrified. Their absolute hatred of Chaos corruption made even the study of such artifacts anathema. Fighting erupted between the two chapters, a conflict that demonstrated the Black Templars' uncompromising stance on matters of purity and faith. This incident highlights an important aspect of Black Templars' strength and also one of their potential weaknesses. Their zealotry, their absolute conviction in the rightness of their beliefs, makes them nearly immune to corruption and doubt, but it also makes them inflexible, sometimes creating conflicts with allies who do not share their exact interpretation of proper conduct. The Black Templars see the world in stark terms of righteous and unrighteous, and they will not compromise even when pragmatism might suggest otherwise. The third Black Templars force on Armageddon was the Hell's Reach Crusade, led by Reclusiarch Grimaldus. As detailed in the previous section, this crusade's defense of Hive Hell's Reach became the stuff of legend, transforming Grimaldus into the hero of Hell's Reach and demonstrating the effectiveness of Black Templars' doctrine even when facing overwhelming odds. With only 100 Space Marines and whatever other forces he could rally, Grimaldus held a critical position for months, buying time for the wider defense and inspiring resistance across the entire planet. Yet the battle for Hell's Reach exemplified what makes the Black Templars so dangerous. They were outnumbered tremendously, facing millions of orcs, with only a fraction of that number in defenders. The strategic situation was desperate, with orc forces having achieved complete surprise through their submarine assault. By any rational calculation, Hell's Reach should have fallen within days, another hive city overwhelmed by the greenskin tide. But the Black Templars do not operate based on rational calculations of force ratios and probable outcomes. They operate on faith, on the absolute conviction that the Emperor will grant victory to the faithful, that righteousness is stronger than any physical advantage the enemy might possess. Grimaldus's refusal to yield, his declaration that he had dug his grave at the temple of the Emperor Ascendant, all was not bravado, but a statement of theological fact. He believed the Emperor would preserve him to complete his mission, or grant him a martyrdom that would inspire others to continue the fight. And that faith proved justified. The temple fell, but Grimaldus survived. The battle was desperate beyond measure, but the defense held long enough for reinforcements and the wider campaign to turn in the Imperium's favor. When skeptics might point to this as proof that faith alone is insufficient, that Grimaldus survived through luck and the inherent resilience of space marine physiology, the Black Templars would argue the opposite. They would say that faith created the conditions for survival, that the Emperor worked through Grimaldus to achieve what was necessary, that divine will manifested through mortal action. But by the time the season of fire arrived, that period when Armageddon's volcanic activity makes its surface temporarily hostile to all life, the battle had reached a bloody stalemate. The Imperial forces had prevented the Orcs from achieving their objectives, but they had not broken the Greenskin invasion. Ghazghkull remained at large. His forces still controlled significant portions of the planet, and the war would clearly continue for years to come. It was then that Ghazghkull made a surprising decision. He left Armageddon, declaring that the war there had become too static, too boring for a warlord of his ambitions. He departed to begin what he called the Great Green Crusade, an even larger campaign of Orc conquest that would take him across the galaxy. When word of this reached Yarrick, the old commissar saw his opportunity to end his personal enemy once and for all. Helbrecht, who had his own reasons for wanting Ghazghkull dead, agreed to provide Black Templars forces for the hunt. So the High Marshal departed Armageddon, taking with him a portion of his crusade to begin what would become a decades-long pursuit of the Orc warlord. He left other Black Templars forces behind to continue the fight on Armageddon itself, the conflict far from over even with Ghazghkull's departure. This decision demonstrated the flexibility of the Black Templars' structure. Because they operate as multiple semi-autonomous crusades, forces could be detached for specific missions without compromising the chapter's other commitments. The Third War for Armageddon continued for years after Ghazghkull's departure, grinding battles that would eventually see the Orcs driven back, but never fully eliminated from the planet. The Black Templars' contribution to this victory cannot be overstated. In space, their aggressive void warfare had blunted the Orc reinforcement capability, turning what could have been an endless tide into a finite, if still massive, force. On the ground, their refusal to yield key positions had maintained the defense at critical moments, preventing the collapse that would have led to planetary defeat. Their mere presence had inspired human defenders, proof that the Emperor had not abandoned Armageddon. And what did this campaign prove about the strength of the Black Templars? It demonstrated their ability to project force on a massive scale, deploying thousands of warriors and dozens of warships to a single conflict zone. Yes, it showed their adaptability, with different crusades taking on radically different roles from fleet command to surface defense to special operations in hostile environments. It highlighted their unwavering determination, their refusal to accept defeat, regardless of the odds or the cost. Most importantly, it proved that the Black Templars remain what they have always been: one of the Imperium's most reliable and effective military assets, warriors who can be counted on to hold the line when all seems lost. The Third War for Armageddon was not the largest conflict in the Black Templars' history, nor was it their most significant victory. But it stands as a clear demonstration of what they can achieve when properly committed, what they represent to the Imperium as a whole. When Armageddon called for aid, 20 Space Marine chapters answered, but only the Black Templars deployed 3 entire crusades. Only they committed resources that dwarfed what any single Codex-compliant chapter could provide. That commitment, that willingness to bring overwhelming force to bear, is one of the fundamental strengths that makes the Black Templars so valuable to the Imperium's defense. Comparing their might, Black Templars versus other chapters. To truly assess the strength of the Black Templars, we must place them in context, comparing them to their fellow Space Marine chapters and examining what makes them unique among the Adeptus Astartes. This is not an exercise in declaring one chapter superior to all others, for every chapter has its particular strengths, its unique capabilities, its specific role in the Imperium's defense. But it is worth examining what the Black Templars bring to the table that other chapters cannot, and conversely, what limitations their unique doctrine imposes. The most obvious difference is numerical. A Codex-compliant Space Marine chapter consists of exactly 1,000 battle brothers, organized into 10 companies of 100 warriors each. This limitation was established by Reboot Guilliman in the Codex Astartes, intended to prevent any single military leader from commanding the kind of power that enabled the War Master's betrayal. Most chapters adhere to this limitation strictly, viewing it not as a restriction, but as a challenge to make the most efficient use of their available forces. The Black Templars, as we have established, exceed this limitation by a substantial margin. Estimates of their true strength vary wildly, with sources suggesting anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 battle brothers spread across their various crusades. Even the lower end of this estimate makes them twice the size of a Codex chapter. The higher estimates would make them comparable to some of the smaller Space Marine legions that existed before the Horus Heresy. This numerical advantage translates directly into operational capacity. Where a Codex chapter might commit a company of 100 warriors to a particular campaign, the Black Templars can deploy an entire crusade of several hundred or even thousand warriors. Where a typical chapter must carefully allocate its forces across multiple theaters, stretching itself thin to meet all its commitments, the Black Templars can maintain multiple crusades simultaneously, and each a substantial force capable of prosecuting major campaigns independently. The Third War for Armageddon provides a clear example. The Salamanders, a first founding chapter, with a reputation for steadfast defense and concern for civilian casualties, deployed their chapter master Tushan and presumably a significant portion of their forces. Yet even with the chapter master present, their contribution was measured in companies, hundreds of warriors, rather than thousands. The Blood Angels sent Captain Erasmus Tycho and the Third Company, 100 of the finest warriors from one of the Imperium's most celebrated chapters. Numerous other chapters made similar commitments. The Black Templars deployed 3 entire crusades, potentially several thousand warriors, along with the High Marshal himself and a significant portion of their fleet. But this level of commitment dwarfed what any single Codex chapter could provide. It demonstrated that when the Black Templars choose to focus on a particular conflict, they can bring to bear forces that match or exceed what multiple other chapters combined might deploy. But numbers are only one aspect of martial strength. The Space Wolves, another chapter that rejects strict Codex compliance, likely match or exceed the Black Templars in absolute numbers through their unique company structure. What truly sets the Black Templars apart is how they employ their numerical advantage through their crusading structure. Consider how a Codex chapter operates. They maintain a fortress monastery on a specific world, with their 10 companies organized into specific roles. The first company consists of veterans, often equipped with Terminator armor. The 2nd through 5th are battle companies, fully equipped for independent operation. The 6th through 9th are reserve companies, specialized in assault, devastator, or tactical roles. The 10th company trains scouts. This structure creates clear roles and expectations, making coordination relatively straightforward. The Black Templars throw this organization out entirely. Every crusade is self-contained, capable of independent operation indefinitely. Every crusade recruits, trains, and indoctrinates its own members. Every crusade maintains its own fleet and equipment. This means that multiple Black Templars forces can operate simultaneously in different sectors of the galaxy, each pursuing separate objectives, each adapting to local conditions without needing to coordinate with distant leadership. Yet this decentralization has significant advantages. It allows rapid response to emerging threats without waiting for central authority to issue orders. It enables the Black Templars to maintain pressure on multiple fronts, preventing enemies from consolidating their forces. It creates redundancy, ensuring that the loss of one crusade does not cripple the chapter's overall effectiveness. Most significantly, it embodies the spirit of the Eternal Crusade, ensuring that the Black Templars are always on the offensive, always hunting the Emperor's enemies, never static or defensive. But decentralization also creates challenges. Coordinating multiple crusades requires the High Marshal's personal attention or significant logistical effort. The lack of centralized record-keeping means the chapter cannot easily track its own strength or losses. The independence of individual marshals can lead to conflicting priorities or even friction between crusades. The Black Templars have accepted these challenges as the price of their crusading doctrine, trusting that the benefits outweigh the costs. In terms of combat effectiveness, comparing chapters is difficult because so much depends on the specific situation, the nature of the enemy, and the objectives being pursued. The Ultramarines, often considered the exemplar of Codex doctrine, excel at combined arms warfare and can adapt to virtually any situation through their mastery of the Codex Astartes. The Blood Angels bring unmatched fury to close combat through their genetic curse that drives them toward berserker rage. The Dark Angels possess esoteric equipment and specialized formations that make them particularly effective against certain enemies. Every chapter has its particular strengths. The Black Templars' strength lies in their combination of numbers, aggression, and faith-driven determination. In any battle where victory requires closing with the enemy and defeating them in melee, the Black Templars excel. Their doctrine emphasizes this kind of warfare. Their training prepares them for it. Their equipment is optimized for it. A Black Templars charge, hundreds of ceramite-clad warriors rushing forward with chainswords revving and bolt pistols blazing, preceded by the Emperor's champions seeking out enemy leaders, supported by chaplains whose litanies drive them to ever greater fury. He represents one of the most intimidating sights in the Imperium's arsenal. Against certain enemies, this doctrine provides tremendous advantages. Orcs, who similarly favor close combat and respect only strength and aggression, find themselves facing humans who match their own enthusiasm for melee. Chaos cultists and traitor guard, who might break under the assault of conventional space marines, find themselves facing zealots whose faith is as unshakable as their own is corrupt. Even Chaos Space Marines, who have had 10,000 years to perfect their own arts of war, must respect the Black Templars' willingness to accept any casualties necessary to achieve victory. But this same doctrine creates vulnerabilities against enemies who can exploit it. The Tau, with their preference for long-range firepower and mobile warfare, can potentially inflict heavy casualties on Black Templars' forces trying to close the distance. Necrons, with their Gauss weaponry that can disintegrate ceramite armor at range, similarly benefit from engagements that emphasize firepower over melee. The Eldar, with their speed and hit-and-run tactics, can potentially avoid the Black Templars' charges and strike at their weaknesses. The Black Templars' rejection of librarians creates both strengths and weaknesses. On one hand, it makes them resistant to certain forms of psychic attack. An enemy psyker attempting to dominate minds or sow doubt through warp powers will find Black Templars particularly resistant, their faith providing a form of protection that even librarian-based psychic shields might not match. The absence of psykers in their ranks also eliminates the risk of possession or corruption that plagues chapters that employ librarians extensively. On the other hand, they lack the battlefield capabilities that librarians provide. They cannot employ precognitive abilities to predict enemy movements. They cannot generate warp-based barriers to protect their forces. They cannot unleash devastating psychic attacks against enemy commanders. Against armies that heavily employ psychic warfare, such as the Thousand Suns or certain tyrannid bioforms, this creates a significant disadvantage that must be compensated for through other means. Their fleet-based nature provides tremendous strategic mobility. The Black Templars can redeploy crusades across the galaxy relatively quickly, responding to threats or opportunities as they arise. They are not tied to defending a specific world or sector, free to pursue the eternal crusade wherever it leads. This mobility allows them to concentrate forces for major campaigns and disperse for multiple simultaneous operations with equal facility. But this same mobility means they lack the kind of territorial presence that other chapters maintain. When a world faces a threat, if it is fortunate enough to be near a Space Marine chapter's homeworld, that chapter can respond almost immediately, deploying from a fortress monastery that contains the accumulated resources of centuries. The Black Templars have no such fortress, no single location where the full might of the chapter can be concentrated. Their chapter keeps, while useful for recruitment and as staging grounds, cannot match the defensive and logistical capabilities of a proper fortress monastery. In terms of equipment and resources, the Black Templars benefit from their size and the distributed nature of their operations. Each crusade maintains its own forge ships, capable of manufacturing and repairing equipment. This means they can potentially produce equipment at a rate that matches their numbers, though the quality might vary between crusades. They have access to standard Space Marine war gear and have pioneered certain variants, most notably the Land Raider Crusader, which they willingly shared with other chapters. Their most significant equipment advantage might be simply the quantity they can field. Where a Codex chapter must carefully allocate suits of Terminator armor among deserving veterans, the Black Templars can potentially field multiple squads of Sword Brethren in Terminator armor simultaneously across different crusades. Where other chapters might have a single Land Raider Crusader, the Black Templars might field dozens across their various forces. Quantity has a quality all its own, and the Black Templars can bring to bear resources that other chapters simply cannot match. Perhaps most importantly, we must consider the intangible factors that contribute to military effectiveness: morale, determination, willingness to accept casualties, ability to function under extreme pressure. These factors matter as much as numbers or equipment. And in these areas, the Black Templars excel. Their zealous faith provides a form of morale that cannot be broken by conventional means. They do not retreat because retreat is literally unthinkable, a betrayal of the Emperor and everything they represent. They accept casualties that would devastate other forces because every death is a martyrdom, every fallen brother a saint whose sacrifice brings the crusade closer to its ultimate victory. This psychological resilience translates into battlefield performance that exceeds what their numbers and equipment alone might suggest. Black Templars' forces have been known to continue fighting long after other formations would have broken, to launch charges when any rational assessment suggests they should withdraw, to hold positions that any military doctrine would deem untenable. This stubbornness, this refusal to acknowledge when they have been defeated, has won them victories that by rights should have been defeats. So where does this leave us in comparing the Black Templars to other chapters? They are not universally superior. Against certain enemies and in certain tactical situations, other chapters would perform better. The Raven Guard's stealth and infiltration capabilities would be more appropriate for covert operations. The Imperial Fist's mastery of siege warfare makes them ideal for both attacking and defending fortifications. The Salamander's concern for civilian casualties and their focus on area denial weapons makes them better suited for certain types of urban warfare. But in terms of raw combat power, ability to project force, and capacity to sustain offensive operations, the Black Templars stand among the Imperium's most formidable assets. They can deploy forces that match what multiple Codex chapters combined might field. They can maintain pressure on multiple fronts simultaneously through their crusading structure. They bring a level of determination and zealotry that makes them nearly unbreakable. And they have proven through 10,000 years of continuous warfare that their doctrine, however unorthodox, works. The Great Rift and the Indomitus Crusade. The opening of the Great Rift, that galaxy-spanning tear in reality that split the Imperium in two, marked perhaps the greatest crisis humanity had faced since the Horus heresy itself. Warp storms of unprecedented scale raged across vast swathes of space, cutting off entire sectors from Terra and from each other. Chaos forces poured through the newly opened tiers, attacking worlds that had known peace for millennia. The Astronomicon itself, that psychic beacon that makes warp travel possible, was dimmed beyond the rift, leaving worlds in what became known as the Imperium Nihilus, in darkness both literal and metaphorical. For the Black Templars, the opening of the Great Rift presented unique challenges. Their strength lay in their dispersed structure, their multiple crusades operating independently across the galaxy. But this same structure became a vulnerability when the galaxy itself was torn apart. Crusades that had been in the wrong place when the rift opened found themselves cut off from the rest of the chapter, unable to communicate with the High Marshal or coordinate with other crusades, trapped in a region where the fundamental rules of reality had changed. The exact number of Black Templars crusades that were lost to the Imperium Nihilus remains unknown, even to High Marshal Helbrecht. Some crusades vanished entirely during the period known as the Noctis Aeterna, those months of darkness when the Astronomicon failed and warp travel became utterly impossible. These crusades might have been destroyed in the chaos of those dark times. They might have been corrupted, falling to the temptations of chaos in their isolation. Or they might still be fighting, maintaining their eternal crusade, even cut off from the rest of the Imperium, refusing to yield regardless of their situation. Helbrecht maintains faith that the lost crusades endure, that they continue to fight the Emperor's enemies wherever they find themselves. This faith is not merely optimism, but reflects a fundamental understanding of Black Templars culture. A crusade that finds itself isolated, without support or communication, would not simply surrender or abandon its mission. The Eternal Crusade does not depend on orders from the High Marshal or coordination with other forces. Each crusade is self-contained, capable of sustaining itself indefinitely. The vows sworn by every Black Templar do not contain clauses for isolation or impossible odds. So Helbrecht believes, with good reason, that lost crusades fight on, and perhaps one day, if the Great Rift can be sealed or stabilized, contact will be re-established. For the crusades that remained in the Imperium Sanctus, the half of the galaxy that retained connection to Terra, the response to the Great Rift demonstrated the Black Templars' fundamental nature. Where other chapters might have pulled back, consolidated their forces, focused on defending what they held, the Black Templars did the opposite. And they identified the Great Rift and the chaos it brought as the greatest threat to the Imperium, therefore the greatest opportunity to fulfill their eternal crusade. Rather than defensive actions, they launched aggressive purges against the forces of chaos that had emerged in the Rift's wake. The Black Templars undertook what they called the Purge of the Imperium Sanctus, a series of campaigns targeting worlds and systems that had fallen to heresy, mutation, or outright chaos corruption during the Noctis Aeterna. While other forces scrambled to establish defensive lines and protect key worlds, the Black Templars were out hunting traitors, reclaiming fallen worlds through the application of bolter and blade. It was the Eternal Crusade writ large, but the Black Templars doing what they do best, finding enemies and destroying them with righteous fury. This aggressive response attracted the attention of Reboot Guilliman, returned Primarch of the Ultramarines and Lord Commander of the Imperium. Guilliman was leading what he called the Indomitus Crusade, a massive military campaign intended to stabilize the Imperium, restore order to chaos-racked sectors, and push back against the myriad threats that had emerged in the Great Rift's wake. Central to his plans were the Primaris Space Marines, enhanced warriors created through technology that the Primarch had commissioned, but which many viewed with suspicion. Guilliman sought out High Marshal Helbrecht personally, choosing to meet with him rather than summon him or communicate through intermediaries. This decision demonstrated the Primarch's political acumen. He knew that the Black Templars were among the most independent and zealous of all Space Marine chapters. Their rejection of the Codex Astartes, their religious devotion to the Emperor, their unique organizational structure, all of these factors made them unpredictable. If they rejected the Primaris Marines, if they saw this new technology as heresy rather than blessing, they could inspire other chapters to do likewise, potentially splitting the Adeptus Astartes at precisely the moment when unity was most crucial. The meeting took place aboard the Eternal Crusader, Helbrecht's flagship and spiritual home of the entire Black Templars chapter. Guilliman came bearing 2 offers and 1 criticism. The offers were acceptance of the Primaris Marine technology, including the ability to create such warriors themselves, and the immediate integration of several thousand Grey Shields. Primaris Marines, who had not yet been assigned to specific chapters, into the Black Templars' ranks. The criticism was pointed. Helbrecht's pursuit of Gazgkul Thraka, his personal vendetta against the Orc warlord, had become an obsession that distracted him from his wider duties to the Imperium. The criticism stung, because it was at least partially accurate. Helbrecht had been hunting Gazgkul for decades since the Third War for Armageddon, devoting significant resources to a pursuit that had not yet achieved its objective. While this pursuit had taken him across multiple sectors and led to the elimination of numerous Orc forces, it was undeniably a personal mission rather than a strategic necessity. Gilliman's point was clear. The Great Rift had created crises across the entire Imperium, and every resource needed to be focused on addressing these existential threats rather than personal vendettas. But Helbrecht did not respond defensively to this criticism. Instead, he acknowledged the Primarch's point, while maintaining that his pursuit of specific enemies served the Emperor's broader will. It was a nuanced response that avoided direct confrontation while not fully conceding the argument. This diplomatic flexibility demonstrated a maturity and strategic thinking that might not have been expected from the leader of such a zealous chapter. More significantly, Helbrecht accepted the Primaris Marines without hesitation. When questioned about this acceptance, given the Black Templars' general suspicion of innovation and their devout traditionalism, Helbrecht explained that he saw in the Primaris technology a spark of the divine. The Emperor himself, working through Guilliman and the Archmagos Call, had blessed the Imperium with these enhanced warriors. To reject them would be to reject a gift from the God Emperor, an act of impiety that Helbrecht would not consider. This interpretation, viewing the Primaris Marines as divinely inspired rather than merely technologically advanced, was quintessentially Black Templars in its reasoning. It also provided theological cover for other zealous or traditionalist chapters who might have rejected the Primaris on principle. If the Black Templars, who worship the Emperor as a living god and maintain some of the strictest adherence to chapter tradition, could accept the Primaris, then surely any chapter could do so without compromising their beliefs. Helbrecht went further than mere acceptance. He immediately promoted several experienced sword brethren to the rank of Marshal, giving them command of new crusades composed primarily of the Grey Shield Primaris Marines that Guilliman had offered. This decision accomplished multiple objectives simultaneously. It integrated the Primaris into the chapter's structure rather than keeping them separate. It expanded the Black Templars' active crusading capacity, creating new forces that could be deployed to address the myriad threats facing the Imperium. And it demonstrated to the Grey Shields that they were being accepted fully as Black Templars, not merely tolerated as outsiders. The integration of Primaris Marines did not proceed entirely smoothly. The Angevin Crusade, one of these newly formed forces, experienced significant difficulties as traditional Black Templars and Primaris Marines struggled to adapt to each other's methods and expectations. The specific nature of these difficulties has not been fully documented, but they were significant enough to become known beyond the chapter. Yet the fact that these problems were addressed and resolved rather than leading to permanent schism speaks to the strength of Black Templars' culture and leadership. There has been speculation that Black Templars have an easier time crossing the Rubicon Primaris, the dangerous procedure that transforms a traditional Space Marine into a Primaris. Some attribute this to their faith, suggesting that the Emperor rewards their devotion by protecting them during the transformation. More skeptical observers note that the Black Templars' stubborn determination not to die might be sufficient explanation. Regardless of the reason, the integration of Primaris technology has made the Black Templars even more formidable, adding enhanced physical capabilities to their already impressive martial prowess. The Great Rift era has also seen the Black Templars establish new chapter keeps across the Imperium Sanctus. Each world they reconquer or defend becomes a potential recruitment ground, a new source of warriors to replace those lost in the endless battles. This expansion of their recruitment base combined with their acceptance of primarist technology, he suggests that the Black Templars might be growing even stronger despite the losses suffered when the rift opened. Their response to the Great Rift crisis demonstrates several key aspects of Black Templars' strength. First, their decentralized structure, while creating vulnerabilities when crusades were cut off, also meant that no single catastrophe could cripple the entire chapter. The loss of contact with crusades in the Imperium Nihilus, while tragic, did not prevent the remaining crusades from continuing their operations. Second, their aggressive doctrine meant they were well suited to the kind of offensive campaigns needed to reclaim fallen worlds. Where some chapters struggled to adapt to the new strategic reality, the Black Templars were already doing what they always did, finding enemies and destroying them. Third, then their faith-based culture allowed them to accept the Primaris Marines as a divine blessing, rather than treating them with the suspicion that might have been expected from such a traditionalist chapter. This theological framework, viewing the Emperor as a living God who can grant miracles and blessings, provided the flexibility needed to embrace significant change without abandoning core traditions. The Black Templars could adopt Primaris technology, could promote new marshals, could form new crusades, all while maintaining that they were following the same eternal crusade that Sigismund had established 10,000 years ago. The current state of the Black Templars, in the era of the Great Rift, suggests a chapter that has been tested but not broken, that has adapted without losing its essential character, or that may actually be growing stronger despite the galaxy-wide catastrophe. They continue their eternal crusade across the Imperium Sanctus, hunting the Emperor's enemies wherever they find them. They maintain faith that their lost brothers in the Imperium Nihilus do the same, refusing to believe that any Black Templar would abandon his vows simply because circumstances became dire. They have integrated new technology and new warriors, while maintaining the traditions and doctrines that have served them for 10 millennia. In many ways, the Black Templars exemplify how the Adeptus Astartes have responded to the Great Rift. They have suffered losses, faced unprecedented challenges, seen their galaxy torn apart. But they continue to fight, continue to believe in the righteousness of their cause, and continue to bring the Emperor's wrath to his enemies. They are bruised, but unbowed, tested, but unbroken, as dangerous to the forces of darkness now as they have ever been throughout their long history. Equipment, relics, and sacred war gear. The strength of any military force depends not only on the skill and determination of its warriors, but also on the tools they wield in battle. For the Black Templars, who emphasize aggressive close combat and view every engagement as an act of worship, their equipment and relics hold significance beyond mere tactical utility. These are not simply weapons, but sacred objects, blessed implements that connect the current generation of warriors to their chapter's glorious past and to the eternal crusade that defines their existence. And the most sacred relic of the entire chapter is the Sword of the High Marshals, carried by every leader of the Black Templars since Sigismund himself. This power sword is not merely ancient, but holds within its construction fragments of the blade that Primarch Rogel Dawn wielded when he accompanied the Emperor onto Horus's flagship during the climactic moments of the Siege of Terra. Each High Marshal who receives this weapon understands that he carries a physical connection to that most pivotal moment in Imperial history, a reminder of the price the Emperor paid and the duty owed to him. The tradition surrounding this sword reflects Black Templars' philosophy perfectly. It was Sigismund's decree that every High Marshal would carry this blade, that they would be constantly reminded of their duty to atone for the Emperor's mortal wounding. As the sword has been reforged multiple times over the millennia as damage and wear necessitated, but each reforging carefully preserves those original fragments, maintaining the physical connection to Dawn and through him to the Emperor. When Helbrecht wields this blade in battle, he strikes not just with his own strength, but with the weight of 10,000 years of tradition. The Emperor's champion, that warrior chosen through visions to represent the Emperor's will in battle, carries equipment of comparable significance. The armor of faith consists of ancient power armor suits that have been blessed and sanctified through centuries of use. These suits vary from crusade to crusade, as each maintains its own sacred armory, but all share certain characteristics. They are typically older patterns of power armor, and dating back centuries or even millennia. Their machine spirits proven through countless battles. They are adorned with purity seals, holy texts, and imperial symbology that mark them as objects of reverence. The black sword, the power weapon wielded by the Emperor's champion, similarly varies in specific form while maintaining consistent purpose. These are power weapons of exceptional quality, often unique pieces that have taken countless enemy lives over centuries of service. Some are power swords in the traditional sense, their blades wreathed in disruption fields that can cleave through any armor. Others might be thunderhammers, mauls, or axes, chosen based on the specific artifact available to the crusade. What matters is not the specific form, but the weapon's proven effectiveness and its role in the tradition established by Sigismund during the Siege of Terra. The Black Templars also maintain extensive collections of other relics scattered across their various crusades. Each crusade carries its own sacred objects, weapons, and armor that have particular significance to that force's history. A bolt pistol that belonged to a particularly revered sword brother, its grips worn smooth by centuries of use. A chainsword that has drunk the blood of 1,000 enemies. Power fists that crushed the skulls of enemy champions. Each of these items represents not just a tool, but a connection to the warrior who used it, a physical link to deeds remembered and honored. Monk Grimaldus's Cenobite servitors carry 3 relics that demonstrate this principle perfectly. After the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant collapsed during the Battle of Hell's Reach, Grimaldus crawled from the rubble carrying the temple's last surviving sacred objects. A broken Aquila statue, the metallic icon of the Emperor shattered but still recognizable. The remains of Hell's Reach's founding charter, ancient parchment documenting the hive's establishment and dedication to the Emperor's service. An orb containing the last of the temple's holy water, blessed liquid that had been used in religious ceremonies for millennia. None of these objects have direct tactical value on the battlefield, but they embody the faith that drives the Black Templars forward. Physical proof that even in the darkest moments, the sacred can be preserved. While in terms of standard equipment, the Black Templars maintain the full arsenal available to Space Marine chapters, with certain preferences that reflect their combat doctrine. They make extensive use of chainswords and power weapons, close combat armaments that suit their aggressive melee tactics. Bolt pistols are favored over bolters in many cases, as they can be used in close quarters while still providing significant firepower. Assault squads equipped with jump packs allow rapid deployment directly into enemy lines, bringing the battle to the foe rather than waiting for the foe to come to them. The Land Raider Crusader represents perhaps the Black Templars' most significant contribution to Imperial armored warfare. Recognizing that the standard Land Raider, while heavily armored and powerful, it could only transport a relatively small number of warriors, the Black Templars designed a variant that could carry larger assault squads while still providing the protection and firepower needed to reach enemy lines intact. The Land Raider Crusader replaces the standard vehicle's Lascanon sponsons with Hurricane Bolter arrays, sacrificing some anti-armor capability for devastating anti-infantry firepower. It can carry 16 fully armored Space Marines compared to the standard version's 10, making it ideal for delivering large assault forces directly into the heart of enemy formations. The Black Templars were so impressed with this design that they shared it with other chapters, even the Grey Knights, as that secretive organization with whom they surprisingly developed a positive relationship, despite the Black Templars' general hatred of Psykers. This willingness to share effective designs demonstrates that the Black Templars, despite their unique doctrine, recognize their place within the broader brotherhood of the Adeptus Astartes. They view themselves as part of a larger crusade, and if a design they developed can help other chapters fight more effectively, then sharing it serves the Emperor's will. For Sword Brethren, the elite veterans of the chapter, Terminator armor represents both protection and privilege. These ancient suits, among the most prized equipment any Space Marine can wear, are restricted to the Sword Brethren alone among the Black Templars. This exclusivity makes Terminator armor not merely protective equipment, but a mark of status, proof that the wearer has proven himself worthy through decades or centuries of service. When a Sword Brother dons Terminator armor, he does so knowing that countless honored brothers wore this same suit before him, that its machine spirit has witnessed battles that have become chapter legend. The Black Templars chaplains wield Crozius Arcanum weapons, power mauls that serve as both symbols of spiritual authority and effective close combat implements. These weapons can vary in specific design, but share the basic form of a maul, topped with some form of imperial iconography, often an aquila or other symbol of the emperor's authority. When a chaplain swings his Crozius in battle, he strikes with both physical force and spiritual power, thus the weapon serving as a channel for the faith that drives him forward. The maintenance and care of all this equipment falls to the chapter's tech marines, those warriors who have studied with the Adeptus Mechanicus and learned the mysteries of the machine cult. For the Black Templars, who maintain a fleet-based existence with forged ships accompanying each crusade, these tech marines play an absolutely crucial role. They must not only maintain and repair the vast quantities of equipment a crusade requires, but also manufacture new equipment as needed, all while operating far from major forge worlds or manufacturing centers. This independence in equipment production and maintenance provides strategic flexibility. A Black Templar's crusade can operate indefinitely far from any Imperial support, manufacturing its own ammunition, repairing battle damage to armor and vehicles, even producing entirely new equipment when necessary. The forged ships that accompany each crusade serve as mobile manufactorums, carrying the tools and knowledge needed to keep a crusade supplied, regardless of how far it ranges from civilized space. But this same independence means that quality and availability can vary between crusades. A crusade that has been particularly successful in its campaigns, that has captured enemy equipment and resources, might be very well supplied with everything from common bolt shells to rare plasma weapons. Another crusade that has faced brutal attrition or operated in resource-poor regions might struggle to maintain even basic equipment levels. The High Marshal attempts to coordinate resource sharing between crusades when practical, but the vast distances involved and the constant state of warfare make such coordination difficult. The Black Templars also maintain less tangible spiritual resources that might not seem like equipment in any traditional sense, but which provide genuine battlefield advantages. Their litanies, those battle prayers and chants delivered by chaplains before and during combat, create psychological and potentially supernatural effects that enhance combat performance. A litany of hate focuses zealotry into improved combat effectiveness. A prayer of protection steadies nerves against terrifying enemies. A chant of righteousness coordinates assault timing across an entire force. These litanies work because the Black Templars believe they work, because faith itself becomes a weapon as potent as any bolter or chainsword. The vows they renew before battle serve similar purposes, focusing individual determination into collective resolve, transforming a force of individual warriors into a unified instrument of the Emperor's will. These spiritual elements of their arsenal cannot be quantified in technical specifications or compared through performance metrics, but they are no less real or significant for that. The result is a military force that is extremely well equipped for its chosen method of warfare. The Black Templars prioritize close combat equipment without entirely neglecting ranged firepower. They maintain supplies and manufacturing capacity sufficient to support sustained operations far from Imperial infrastructure, while they preserve relics and sacred weapons that connect them to their history while embracing new technology when it serves their mission. And they understand that faith itself can be weaponized, that spiritual strength translates into physical effectiveness on the battlefield. When a Black Templars crusade deploys for battle, they do not merely carry weapons, but bear sacred implements blessed through use and tradition. They do not simply wear armor, but are protected by suits that have guarded honored brothers through countless campaigns. They do not fight as individuals, but as part of a tradition stretching back 10,000 years to the second founding, connected to that history through the relics they carry and the vows they swear. This combination of physical equipment and spiritual armament creates warriors who are as prepared psychologically as they are materially, as formidable in their faith as in their martial capabilities. Notable campaigns and crusades. To understand the full scope of Black Templars' strength and the role they have played in the Imperium's survival, we must examine some of the countless campaigns they have prosecuted over their 10 millennium history. These are not merely military engagements, but demonstrations of what the Black Templars represent, how they approach warfare, and what they can achieve when committed to a cause. Each campaign showcases different aspects of their capabilities while reinforcing the common themes of zealous determination and aggressive prosecution of the Eternal Crusade. At the Donatello system, Purge stands as one of the Black Templars' earliest recorded actions as an independent chapter. Shortly after the second founding, during the period known as the Scouring, when Loyalist forces hunted down the remnants of the traitor legions across the galaxy, the Black Templars descended upon the Donatello system. Intelligence suggested that Chaos forces, including elements of the Night Lords, had established strongholds in that system. The Black Templars' response demonstrated the ferocity that would define their chapter. They did not negotiate, did not offer terms, did not attempt to rehabilitate worlds that had fallen to chaos. They simply attacked with overwhelming force, purging every tainted world until nothing remained but sterile rock. The Donatello system was left empty, and a warning to any who might consider trafficking with the ruinous powers. The Vinculus Crusade, led by Marshal Helbrecht before his elevation to High Marshal, showcased the Black Templars' capacity for sustained offensive operations. This multi-decade campaign saw them pushing into a region that had been cut off from the Imperium for centuries, reclaiming worlds that had fallen to various threats ranging from orc incursions to heretical cults. What made the Vinculus Crusade notable was not a single decisive battle, but the systematic approach to reconquest. World after world fell to Black Templars' assault, each victory leading directly to the next target, the crusade maintaining momentum through careful logistics and aggressive tactics. By the time the campaign concluded, an entire sector had been returned to Imperial control, and Helbrecht's reputation as a capable commander was firmly established. The Ghoul Stars Crusade represented one of the most ambitious and ultimately mysterious campaigns in recent Black Templars history. The Ghoul Stars region has long been considered cursed, a haunted stretch of space where entire expeditions have vanished without trace. Previous Imperial forces that entered that region were never heard from again, leading many to conclude that whatever dwelt there was too dangerous to confront. But when Helbrecht became High Marshal in 989 M-41, he launched a crusade specifically to eliminate the Scythor Fiends, a Xenos species believed to inhabit the Ghoul Stars. For 8 years, the Black Templars fought through the outlying systems, exterminating every Sith or Fiend they encountered and pushing deeper into that haunted region. The casualties were significant, the conditions brutal, but the crusade pressed forward with characteristic determination. When they finally reached what they believed were the core systems, they found them mysteriously abandoned. The Scythor Fiends were gone, their worlds empty, no explanation available for where they had fled or why. This ambiguous conclusion to Helbrecht's first major campaign as High Marshal could have been seen as failure, but it also demonstrated that the Black Templars could project force into regions other Imperial forces dared not venture. The Verderworld's campaign saw a Black Templars crusade join forces with the Blood Angels in a campaign against a world corrupted by a demon of Slaanesh. This operation highlighted both the Black Templars' capability in combined operations and their absolute hatred of chaos corruption. The fighting included a desperate battle in a temple complex where the demon had manifested, requiring High Marshal Ludoldus, Emperor's champion Ulricus, and Canoness Jasmine of the Sisters of Battle to work together to banish the creature. The fact that the Black Templars used a holy orb of Antioch, a rare and powerful artifact, to trigger an earthquake that destroyed the temple complex demonstrates their willingness to employ any means necessary to eliminate Chaos Taint, even at tremendous cost. The Declate's crusade focused on a massive orc invasion, demonstrating the Black Templars' effectiveness against greenskin enemies. Orcs naturally favor close combat and respect strength above all else, and making them ideal opponents for Black Templars' doctrine. The crusade pursued the orc forces across multiple systems, never allowing them to consolidate or establish permanent strongholds. What might have become a regional threat was eliminated through aggressive pursuit and decisive engagements that gave the orcs no opportunity to recover between defeats. The barbarous incursion saw Black Templars forces responding to a Death Guard attack. The Death Guard, traitor marines dedicated to the chaos god Nurgle, represent everything the Black Templars despise, traitors who have embraced corruption and turned against the Emperor. The Black Templars' response to this incursion was characteristically uncompromising. They did not merely drive back the Death Guard, but pursued them with the intent to eliminate every traitor, as accepting heavy casualties in battles that saw toxic weapons and plague-spreading attacks used against them. Their determination eventually forced the Death Guard to withdraw, denying Chaos a foothold in that region. The battle for Golgotha in 996-41 showcased Marshal Actoan's tactical acumen. Golgotha was an entire system dominated by orcs, who had established a strong presence across multiple worlds. Rather than attempting to reclaim worlds one at a time, which would have taken years and allowed the orcs to reinforce each position, Actoan struck at the orc leadership. The campaign focused on decapitation strikes targeting war bosses and their closest lieutenants, creating chaos in orc command structures and turning what had been a unified threat into squabbling bands that could be defeated in detail. Yet the system was pacified in a fraction of the time a conventional campaign would have required. The Athalor Crusade demonstrated Black Templars' persistence against one of the most dangerous threats in the galaxy. The Tyranids, those extragalactic horrors that devour all biological matter in their path, represent a challenge that cannot be negotiated with or intimidated. They must be met with firepower and determination, and the Black Templars possess both in abundance. The Athalor Crusade fought multiple engagements against Tyranid splinter fleets, learning to recognize the patterns in how the hive mind operated, and developing tactics specifically designed to counter Tyranid bioforms. While individual battles against Tyranids are brutal and casualties typically heavy, as the Crusade's success in protecting multiple worlds from consumption demonstrated that even this seemingly unstoppable threat could be defeated through proper tactics and unwavering determination. During the Aurilla Crusade, the Black Templars faced a particularly insidious threat, a Genestealer cult that had infiltrated an entire hive world's population. These cults, created by Tyranid vanguard organisms, represent a different kind of danger than conventional military threats. They hide among civilian populations, subverting from within, turning loyal imperial citizens into unknowing servants of the hive mind. The Black Templars' response showcased their willingness to take actions that other chapters might hesitate at. They conducted systematic purges, and eliminating not just the obvious cult members, but anyone who might have been compromised, accepting that innocent casualties would occur rather than risk leaving corruption to spread. The Crusade of Sorrow earned its name through the heavy losses sustained while liberating a world that had fallen to Dark Eldar raiders. The Dark Eldar, those twisted remnants of a fallen civilization who sustained themselves through torture and suffering, had established a stronghold on an imperial world and were harvesting its population for their twisted purposes. The Black Templars' assault succeeded in driving the Dark Eldar away and liberating the survivors, but the casualties were severe. The Crusade lost several notable champions and numerous battle brothers, their sacrifice remembered in the Crusade's name. More recently, as the Black Templars participated in the Indomitus Crusade, following the opening of the Great Rift, their involvement in stabilizing newly reclaimed or defended worlds, establishing new chapter keeps, and prosecuting the purge of the Imperium Sanctus demonstrated their continued effectiveness in the current era. They adapted to fighting alongside Primaris Marines, integrated new technology, and faced threats ranging from chaos incursions to orc invasions to tyrannid attacks, proving that 10,000 years of tradition had not made them inflexible or unable to adapt to changing conditions. What ties all these campaigns together is a consistent approach to warfare. The Black Templars identify an enemy, deploy overwhelming force if possible, strike with maximum aggression, and do not relent until the enemy is utterly destroyed. They do not typically engage in protracted sieges or defensive campaigns by preference, though they will hold ground when necessary, as Grimaldus demonstrated at Hell's Reach. They do not negotiate or offer terms to their enemies. They bring the Emperor's wrath, and they do not stop until that wrath has been satisfied. This consistent approach creates predictability in some ways, making Black Templars' tactics relatively straightforward for enemies who have studied them. But it also creates a psychological impact that cannot be overstated. When an enemy learns that the Black Templars are coming, they know that negotiation is not possible, that retreat will be pursued, that mercy will not be offered. This knowledge can break enemy morale before the first shot is fired, turning what might have been a desperate defense into a rout. As enemy forces choose to flee rather than face warriors, they know will accept any casualties necessary to achieve victory. The Black Templars, today, an undying force. In the grim darkness of the current era, with the galaxy split by the Great Rift and the Imperium besieged on all fronts, the Black Templars remain what they have always been, an uncompromising force of righteous fury dedicated to the eternal crusade. They have adapted to new realities, integrated new technologies and warriors, faced losses and setbacks, yet their fundamental character remains unchanged from the days when Sigismund first swore the oath that would define his chapter for 10 millennia. High Marshal Helbrecht continues to lead the chapter with the same stubborn determination that has characterized his tenure. Though the opening of the Great Rift cost him contact with numerous crusades, though his personal hunt for Gazkul has yet to achieve its ultimate objective, though the Imperium faces crises on a scale not seen since the Horus Heresy, Helbrecht maintains absolute faith in the righteousness of the Eternal Crusade. He believes the lost crusades fight on in isolation. He trusts that every battle, every sacrifice, serves the Emperor's will. He knows that the Black Templars will endure because endurance is what they do, what they have always done. The integration of Primaris Marines has strengthened the chapter while maintaining its traditions. New crusades, led by newly promoted marshals, hunt the Emperor's enemies with the same zeal that characterized the chapter's earliest campaigns. Veterans who have crossed the Rubicon Primaris bring enhanced capabilities to their service without losing the faith and determination that made them effective warriors in the first place. The balance between tradition and adaptation that has always characterized the Black Templars continues to serve them well. Across the Imperium Sanctus, Black Templars' crusades operate as they always have, identifying threats and eliminating them with maximum prejudice. A crusade might be found fighting orcs in one sector, then redeploying thousands of light years to confront a chaos incursion in another. Another might be deep in enemy territory, cut off from support but continuing to fight because retreat is not in their vocabulary. Still others might be consolidating recent victories, establishing new chapter keeps, recruiting new warriors to replace those lost in the endless battles. The Black Templars' chapter keeps, scattered across hundreds of worlds throughout the Imperium, serve as constant reminders of the chapter's presence and commitments. Each keep is a fortress garrisoned by Black Templars who train recruits and maintain watch over their assigned world. Each represents a world that the chapter has fought for, either conquering it from enemies or defending it from attack. The network of keeps provides the recruitment base necessary to sustain the chapter's numbers, ensures the Black Templars maintain influence across vast swathes of space, and serves as staging grounds for future crusades. The Eternal Crusader itself remains the spiritual heart of the chapter, that ancient Gloriana-class battleship that has known no home port since the second founding. High Marshal Helbrecht commands the chapter from its bridges, coordinates crusades from its strategiums, and maintains the chapter's most sacred relics in its chapels. The ship has been repaired and rebuilt countless times over the millennia, its original structure supplemented with new sections and technologies, while the core remains unchanged, much like the chapter itself. The Black Templars' relationship with other imperial institutions continues to be complex. The Inquisition maintains its suspicious watch, uncertain that the chapter exceeds codex limitations, but unable to prove it definitively or take action against a force whose loyalty to the Emperor is unquestionable. Other Space Marine chapters view the Black Templars with respect mixed with occasional frustration at their unwillingness to coordinate or compromise. The Ecclesiarchy, the official church of the Imperial Creed, finds in the Black Templars kindred spirits who share their understanding of the Emperor as a living god deserving of worship. Reclusiarch Grimaldus continues to serve as the chapter's spiritual compass, ensuring that traditions are maintained and faith remains strong. His legend as the hero of Hell's Reach inspires not just Black Templars, but Imperial forces across multiple sectors. When Grimaldus appears on a battlefield, yet his mere presence provides a morale boost that can turn desperate situations in the Imperium's favor. He embodies the best of what the Black Templars represent: unwavering faith, tactical acumen, willingness to accept any sacrifice, and absolute commitment to the eternal crusade. The Black Templars' reputation has been further enhanced by their actions during and after the Great Rift's opening. While some chapters struggled to respond to the crisis, while others pulled back to defensive positions, the Black Templars immediately went on the offensive. Their aggressive prosecution of the purge of the Imperium Sanctus eliminated countless threats before they could consolidate. Their willingness to accept Primaris reinforcements and technology helped smooth the integration of these warriors across the Adeptus Astartes. And their faith that lost crusades continue fighting even in isolation demonstrates the strength of their traditions and culture. In terms of pure military capability, the Black Templars remain one of the most formidable forces the Imperium can deploy. Their numbers, likely exceeding 5,000 battle brothers across all crusades, give them a force projection capacity that few other chapters can match. Their zealous determination makes them nearly unbreakable, able to continue fighting when other forces would have routed. Their aggressive doctrine suits the kind of offensive operations necessary to reclaim worlds and push back enemy advances. Their fleet-based nature provides strategic mobility that allows rapid response to emerging threats. But numbers and equipment alone do not explain the Black Templars' significance. But their true strength lies in what they represent to the wider Imperium. They are proof that faith can be a weapon as powerful as any technology. They demonstrate that determination and righteousness can triumph over seemingly impossible odds. They embody the crusading spirit that the Imperium desperately needs in an age of existential crisis. When common soldiers hear that the Black Templars are coming, when planetary governors know that a crusade has been dispatched to defend their world, it provides hope that transcends mere military calculations. The Black Templars also serve a symbolic role within the Adeptus Astartes. They prove that the Codex Astartes, while valuable, is not the only path to effectiveness. They demonstrate that faith and tradition have their own power, and that 10,000 years of consistent doctrine can produce warriors as capable as any produced by more flexible or adaptive approaches. They show that the Space Marines are not merely super soldiers, but warriors, bound by honor, tradition, and faith, that these intangible factors matter as much as physical capability. Looking toward the future, whatever that future might hold in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium and beyond, the Black Templars show no signs of wavering from their eternal crusade. They will continue to hunt the Emperor's enemies across the stars. They will maintain their traditions while adapting to new realities. They will accept whatever sacrifices are necessary to achieve victory. They will never yield, never compromise, never rest. Or is it because rest would betray the vow that Sigismund swore 10,000 years ago? The chapter faces significant challenges. The Great Rift has cut them off from crusades that might represent a substantial portion of their strength. The galaxy grows ever more dangerous, with threats multiplying faster than even the Black Templars can address them. Attrition takes its toll, with warriors lost in the endless battles, unable to be perfectly replaced despite aggressive recruitment. The Imperium itself teeters on the brink of collapse, assailed by enemies on every front, and even the Black Templars cannot be everywhere at once. But these challenges are not fundamentally different from what the chapter has always faced. The Black Templars have been fighting against impossible odds since their founding. Yet they have lost countless brothers to enemy action over 10 millennia. They have faced enemies that should have destroyed them and prevailed through faith and fury. They have adapted to changing circumstances while maintaining their core identity. There is no reason to believe they cannot continue to do so for another 10,000 years, or for however long the Imperium endures. Conclusion: why they stand apart. As we reach the end of our exploration of the Black Templars, we must return to the fundamental question that began this journey. Just how strong are the Black Templars in Warhammer 40k? The answer, as with most questions worth asking, is both simple and complex. In terms of raw numerical strength, the Black Templars are likely the largest loyalist Space Marine chapter in existence, with estimates suggesting they field anywhere from several thousand to potentially 6,000 or more battle brothers. This alone would make them formidable, representing the combat power of multiple Codex-compliant chapters combined. When the Black Templars commit to a campaign, they can bring to bear resources that few other chapters can match. In terms of combat effectiveness, the Black Templars excel in aggressive close-quarters warfare, their preferred method of fighting. They have developed doctrine and training specifically designed to maximize their effectiveness in melee combat, supported by equipment choices that favor assault operations. Their zealous faith provides psychological resilience that makes them nearly unbreakable. Against enemies that can be met directly, that can be charged and defeated in close combat, the Black Templars are among the most dangerous forces in the Imperium's arsenal. In terms of strategic capability, their crusading structure provides flexibility and force projection that traditional chapter organization cannot match. They can maintain multiple simultaneous operations across vast distances, respond rapidly to emerging threats, and sustain offensive campaigns indefinitely through their fleet-based existence. They are not tied to defending specific territory, but free to hunt enemies wherever they appear. In terms of tradition and cultural strength, the Black Templars have maintained unwavering commitment to their founding principles for 10,000 years. Their faith in the Emperor as a living god, their determination to wage eternal crusade, their absolute refusal to compromise or yield, and these factors have remained constant through ages that have seen other chapters rise and fall, that have witnessed the Imperium itself transform almost beyond recognition. But strength cannot be measured only in numbers, equipment, or victories. The Black Templars' true strength lies in what they represent, the example they provide, and the hope they inspire. In the grim darkness of the far future, where humanity clings to survival against impossible odds, where every day might bring extinction, the Black Templars stand as proof that faith matters, that determination can overcome any obstacle, that the righteous can prevail against the darkness. They demonstrate that the Space Marines are not merely super soldiers, genetically enhanced warriors, following orders and executing doctrine. They are crusaders in the truest sense, and believers in a cause they consider sacred, warriors who fight not for glory or conquest, but because they believe with absolute conviction that they serve the Emperor's will. This faith transforms them from effective soldiers into something more, into warriors whose strength derives as much from their beliefs as from their training and equipment. The Black Templars also prove that diversity within the Adeptus Astartes strengthens rather than weakens the Space Marines as a whole. The Codex Astartes, provides an excellent framework for organizing and employing Space Marine forces, and the vast majority of chapters benefit from following it. But the Black Templars, along with a handful of other non-codex chapters, prove that alternative approaches can be equally effective. The Eternal Crusade doctrine works for the Black Templars because it aligns with their beliefs, their traditions, and their understanding of how to best serve the Emperor. There are, of course, limitations to Black Templars' strength. Their aggressive doctrine makes them vulnerable to enemies who can exploit it. Their rejection of librarians denies them capabilities other chapters consider essential. Their zealotry sometimes creates conflicts with allies, or prevents compromises that might be strategically advantageous. Their decentralized structure creates coordination challenges and makes accurate assessment of their own strength difficult. No force is perfect, and the Black Templars are no exception. But these limitations are accepted as the price of their approach, trade-offs made consciously in pursuit of what they believe is right. The Black Templars are not trying to be perfect. They are trying to fulfill the Eternal Crusade, to bring the Emperor's wrath to his enemies, to prove through deeds rather than words that they serve humanity's throne world and its divine master with absolute loyalty. By their own measure, they have succeeded for 10,000 years, and they show no signs of stopping. So how strong are the Black Templars? They are strong enough to have waged war continuously since the Second Founding without rest or respite. Strong enough to have participated in nearly every major conflict the Imperium has faced across 10 millennia. Strong enough to have produced heroes like Sigismund, Helbrecht, and Grimaldus, whose names are known far beyond their chapter. Strong enough to have survived the opening of the Great Rift, adapted to the integration of Primaris Marines, and continued their crusade despite losses that would have broken lesser organizations. But perhaps more importantly than any measure of military capability, the Black Templars are strong enough in their faith to never doubt, never waver, never consider that they might be wrong. In the grim darkness of the far future, where doubt can literally kill, where the forces of chaos seek to corrupt the faithful and turn them against everything they believe, this certainty is a weapon as potent as any bolter or chainsword. The Black Templars know what they fight for, why they fight, and they will never stop fighting until the Eternal Crusade is complete. And so the Black Templars endure, black and white Crusader crosses displayed proudly on their armor, your weapons chained to their wrists, in the tradition Sigismund adopted from Khan so long ago, vows renewed before every battle, faith unwavering despite 10,000 years of war. They are not the most numerous force in the galaxy. They are not invincible. They are not perfect. But they are the Black Templars, the Eternal Crusaders, the Emperor's most zealous sons, and they will never yield. If you enjoyed learning about the Black Templars and their incredible strength, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are countless other aspects of Warhammer 40k lore to explore, more heroes to discover, more battles to examine. The Eternal Crusade continues, and there are always more stories to tell. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history and might of the Black Templars. Remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the Black Templars have been fighting that war longer and with greater determination than perhaps any other force in the Imperium. No pity, no remorse, no fear.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.